Welcome to Tales from SYL Ranch Live, where everyone is entitled to my opinion, and I'm Bill Stone. And tonight on Tales from SYL Ranch, I don't know if I'm going to get to any callers tonight, if anybody wants to. If you really want to, I'll take you, because I have a hard time getting you. But if you're, I'm not sure what I'll have time to get to. I have a few things that are rather lengthy to talk about. We'll start out, of course, as usual, with the usual weekly current Lancaster County virus statistics for that virus that I can't talk about without getting my show rated even lower than it already is. We will talk about a big one, which how leftists have created a whole website that is dedicated to targeting Trump donors for what can only be death. Have me a review of Star Trek Discovery's Season 3, Episode 3, People of Earth. We will also talk about, on the subject of websites this whole time, how leftists have created a right-wing YouTuber hit list. And we may do some updates on the Civil War too as well. And of course, this is a live stream, so even if I'm not able to get to you via chat with Skype, which I may not be able to do tonight, I'm certainly going to talk to all of you in chat. You can talk to me about anything that you want. You can talk to me about any topic, whether it's political, social, economic, or the virus I can't mention without YouTube ranking be even lower than it already does, the United States, the Civil War II, or even things related to science fiction, fantasy, horror, superheroes, and other related genre. I'm happy to answer every question in as much detail and as truthfully as I can. There are some personal subjects that I won't discuss, but everything else pretty much fair game. I'll get to as many of my viewers as possible with the understanding that I don't want the thing to go much longer than about 3 hours because I'm an old man and I have lower back arthritis and it tends to start to hurt after a while. If I do get a chance to call in for the show, I'll give you some instructions for that. But again, I think tonight might be one of those nights where I've just got so much going on that I'm not sure I can fit any callers in. So, getting over to my chat, just to start off the night with, Drop2 says, or day, as the case may be, say, hey, Bill, I hope you're well. I'm sure glad I'm not in the USA right now. No matter who wins, there will be violence. Yes, I think you're absolutely right. He also says STD, which is what we call Star Trek Discovery, because it's not a very good show. It's more like an STD. Yeah, it was a soap opera, and now STD has a human/Trill symbiote to fill the Wesley Crusher, the human MacGuffin, void that the show never realized it had. Yes, that's absolutely right. And just to make it more interesting, you just can't convince me. You just can't convince me that the super genius girl with the lesbian haircut number 3 is not gay. Seems like they're telegraphing that. She's gay. We'll see, but good God, how much more obvious can you make it, So I will answer now the question that was never asked. What are the current virus statistics here in Lancaster County? Well, as always, I source this with a very good website. It's linked to in my description box below. Very good source for site for information, for Nebraska. I don't know if you can get any other states in there, but Nebraska's is great. The total count of population of Lancaster County remains at roughly 319,090. That's probably a little off. Probably gone up since they counted that last. The total Lancaster County number of tests is 93,801, which is up 15,481 from 2 weeks ago, which was the last time I checked this. Last week was watching that stupid debate thing. But we had some great conversations afterwards. I certainly encourage people who don't agree with me, pop in and we will chat up a storm. And ordinarily, I would love to get you on the phone. Skype, that would be awesome. One thing to remember about that number of the total county tests in Lancaster County is that this does not, in fact, represent the actual number of people that were tested, because anytime you have a positive test, you're going to get repeated positive tests on the same person. The total number of Lancaster County positive tests did go up at 8,981, which is actually up 2,076 from 2 weeks ago, but that would correspond to the additional number of testing. The total number of deaths in Lancaster County went up rather dramatically to 45. That is up 19 from 2 weeks ago. You have to, again, imagine that they have now more positive tests, so they're probably going to get more deaths out of it. Deaths as a percentage of total tested is at 0.47%, which is up a bit from 2 weeks ago, which again corresponds to the increased number of positive tests. Deaths as a percentage of positive tests has gone up considerably to 1.163%. That was way up from last week, 2 weeks ago, which was 0.337, although it's still only 1.163% of those who were tested positive died. But again, that corresponds really to the number of tests. But really keep in mind this number. This is the one that to me matters a lot, which is the deaths as a percentage of the population of the county, which is still only 0.00595%. You're still not talking about a very large number. It's still a very, very small number of people. Drop of Truth says, never realized traveling through a time displacement wormhole makes you put on weight. Only Stamets and Saru haven't gained plenty of weight. Chalk that for the stress? I don't know. That one's really function. I was going to talk about it too in the review too. I will talk about it then. That's really a function of the fact that they have these skin-tight uniforms that only look good on you if you're actually a bit anorexic. Anybody who's more than that really suffers, and there's just no getting around it. So, the big thing I want to talk about tonight, oh my God. Now, I don't have prepared remarks on this because this thing's kind of in flux, and I'm not sure if it was due to me or not. I have no idea, but the timing was interesting. You see leftists, real quick here, Dalton Brazier, you got to think, a lot more people have COVID than the amount of people who have tested positive, because not everybody gets a test. Yeah, well, if you never get a test, if you never have any symptoms, who cares? The only thing I really care about still is that ultimately is that number as a percentage of the population, 0.595. Even if you get into the positive cases that have tested, have deaths at 1.163%, you're still not talking about a very large percentage of them. And this percentage of the population is still infinitesimal. So even if you get it, if you don't have any symptoms, if nothing ever happens to you, if it's just a cold and it goes by, who cares? I don't care. I care if it gets to be a number that seems to be significant, and it's not. But we have today's big thing. The leftists have created a website specifically targeted at getting Trump voters dead. This was, and this is why I don't have any prepared remarks on this, this was the front page of that site. It was DonaldTrump.watch. That's changed, and I'll talk about that in a second and how and maybe why that changed. I'm not sure. But we have this website, DonaldTrump.watch. The fascinating thing about this was it allows you to, or allowed you to, and I think will again, geolocate any donors to the Trump campaign. Now, I have never been able to figure out what the pins in here are, because what it does is it takes records from the Federal Election Commission that are, in fact, public, and it geolocates them on a map, a Google map, and it did anyway. I'm going to talk of that. But it was just, this site, I looked it up, because I'm in IT, I can do all this behind-the-scenes magic to some extent. I looked it up, and the site had been registered on the 28th of September in 2019 and went online in December 20th of 2019. So it's been up for a good 10 months. And you could do this, geolocate stuff to people. I don't know what these pins mean, because when you used to click on them, it didn't seem to have any actual relationship to the amount of money that they donated. You'd think, red would be a lot, yellow wouldn't be so much. And I have no idea what these blue ones are over there, because that one wouldn't click. But if you clicked any of those buttons, you got this. Now, the blacked out area here that I have redacted is the name and address of one of my neighbors 4 doors down. You can see how often he donated, or she. It's probably both in that place. And the total amount that they donated was a measly $1,575 to the Trump campaign. Now, you may also notice down here that there are buttons so that you could share them to social media simply by clicking on them. And getting this address, if I hadn't redacted it, if you're on your phone, you just tap it. And you'd instantly have directions to that person because it would feed into like Google Maps, or I don't know what happens on the iOS side, but they've got to have something similar. So all you had to do was tap it and you had directions to this person's house. And look what it says. Americans that give money to support a racist. What do you think this site is for? It's a hit list. That's all it was, is a complete hit list. It's there so that people on the left can find Trump donors and kill them. There is no other possible use of that site. I was shocked that it appeared to have been up for a good 10 months before it came to my attention. It may just simply have been that it wasn't doing what it did. This was horrifying to me. Dropper 2 says lockdowns in Victoria, particularly Melbourne, have eased. That's good. Glad to see that. Citizens can now travel to, but not over 25 whole kilometers. Great. Masks are still mandatory. Borders are still closed, and the economy is in the toilet, pretty much like here. Yeah. Hey, Larry, how you doing tonight? Did Bill Gates or George Soros create that app? No, I don't know who did, and I did some research on it. The domain was registered with a company called Dynadot LLC. They're a domain registrar. You can just you can buy domains. I use Network Solutions just because I registered my original domain wrstone.com back in the 1990s, and they were really the only game in town. Excuse me. They're more expensive than some other places now, but I just stick with them because they're there. But the Dynadot is a place where you can register your domain. And you can do like I've done with my domains, which is you can set them up to be invisible as to who registered them. It used to be that you had to have your name out there and a contact out there that you could be reached at. And that was always interesting because you could see exactly who it was the domain belonged to, whether it was a company or an individual. I'm kind of sad that that's gone because I would have liked to have known who had put this website up particularly. I don't know if it was Soros or not, Drop of Truth. There's so many people in the world and so many crazy leftists who want to kill people. Who knows? Who knows who put this up? It's not like it would have been difficult, really. Marshall is here. He could tell you from the programming side that this is not anything that would have been terribly complicated to program. It was not at all terribly complicated. I couldn't do it. Give me 6 months and maybe, some study and I might be able to do it, but there's tons and tons of programmers out there who could have done this okay, this is easy. For me, it would have been a little harder accessing that FEC database and maybe keeping it maintained because I don't know if FEC makes it available online or not. But this is a horrifying site, a truly horrifying site with only one possible motive: to give people addresses to people that they knew were Trump supporters to kill them. And I can say, look at the front page right here. Americans that give money to support a racist. It was horrifying. I saw this thing. Marshall says, hey, Drop, anyone can get the data. Yes, it's very easy and open source information. Making the map is a 2-hour task. Anyone can do it. Okay, Marshall's the programmer. I believe him. The Clinton Foundation, maybe. Again, it's impossible to tell. It's impossible to tell from public records who owned this domain. So I found out about it earlier this week. In fact, I found out about it on, let me check my calendar here. I found out about this thing on or about the 19th, just a few days ago. I'm sorry, the 26th, just a few days ago. Now, I looked it up. Now, this site operates in Amazon Web Services. Marshall knows what Amazon Web Services is. It's more than a hosting company. It's hard to describe to somebody who is not in that world like I was. But I used Amazon Web Services very extensively toward the end of my career. What they're really, Amazon Web Services is in the process of doing, and pretty successfully, is getting rid of big data centers owned by individual companies and moving that out to Amazon Web Services. As an example of how you can use it, one of the ways that I did. And I'm still a customer of theirs because of this. And I sometimes spin up my own equipment to run. My father, he was a healthcare provider. And the weirdest thing about healthcare providers is he was a single man operation. When he passed away, his business disappeared, right? It didn't actually legally disappear for a whole year after that because of legalities involved and having to pay taxes on it and stuff like that. But the deal is, once the business has disappeared as a healthcare provider, you still need to keep the records for 7 years. Well, there's nobody in my family aside from me who would even know how to access the records. They were all on computers, that my father had, and I'd actually put the network together for him some years ago. And so I said, I don't want to keep this crap around. I don't want to see it sitting around, and I want to have it someplace that's a little more secure in terms of where the data is going to be and all that. So I migrated it off of his equipment onto Amazon Web Services. So now if we need to get to those records, all I need to do is essentially turn on this equipment in AWS. So this site here was operating on Amazon Web Services platform. And I said, holy crap, this is really, really frightening. Marshall says, I should make one for Biden contributors. I hang loose, blood. I'll get to that in a second because this site changed, and I think I know why. Marshall says, Amazon Web Services is distributed hosting and data warehousing services. Yeah, it's a big, giant thing. Multiple data centers all over the world. Well, over the country, I know for sure when I was doing it. My NDA has expired, so I can tell you I worked for a company that did government work, and they were moving stuff out of their own data centers and into Amazon Web Services, in a particular Hardin data center in Virginia. That's where they've always had their stuff, is out there. So I knew that they were moving their things out of there. The stuff that we were working on for the federal government was all in Amazon Web Services. Oh, that was a nightmare because their functionality was different from the rest of the functionality that we had. And you had to maintain, Marshall, 2 separate code bases. It was horrifying. It was just horrifying. Updating the site was a nightmarish operation. Drop 2 says, it makes me chuckle when people think that the internet cloud is actually a cloud, not a server farm. It's more than a server farm. It's kind of what they call it. I mean, Amazon Web Services has got at least like 5 major data centers in the U.S., and I think they've got some overseas, and they're all rather connected up together. About the only thing that's walled off is their government services stuff, but it is so secure that if you have a bunch of your stuffs for your business sitting over here, and there's another business over there right next to it, you will never know that each other exists. In fact, Amazon Web Services, Amazon's whole goal with it was to create a system on which you would be able to build a platform as complex as Amazon.com. And it's massive and it's huge, and a lot of people are moving over there. It's got a lot of things going for it. Whenever I need to do something such as penetration testing, which I'll talk about in a second, I do it from an Amazon Web Services platform because, hey, you can't trace it back to me, which is precisely why they did it here. You can't trace it back. The only people that know who that customer are is Amazon. That's why I do my penetration testing out of there. You can't tell where it's coming from aside from, oh, look, this is an IP address that belongs to Amazon, and I know how to backwards look that up, which I did. Marshall says, multiple code bases makes me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. Oh, it was all just because of the requirements the government had with us. There was no good reason for it at all. Oh, it's a nightmare. Anyhow, I said to myself, that thing's in Amazon Web Services. That's interesting. That means that I can file an abuse claim with them. So I sent Amazon Web Services an email to their appropriate email address, and they're usually pretty, good about getting back to you relatively quickly, and they did. And I said, you guys, one of your customers has a site here that can only be used for one thing: finding Trump supporters and murdering them. That's all it could be used for. There's no other reason for that site. And they sent me back, and they said what I thought they were going to say, which is, well, one of our customers is this, blah, blah, blah. We don't mess with our customer stuff, blah, 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 blah. And I wrote back to them. I said, no, you don't understand. Take a look at that site. You tell me if you think there's any reason other than to have this site up to kill people. And they sent me back things. And well, blah, 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 but you can talk to our customer directly, blah, blah, blah. I said, no, for God's sake, do not give out my identity. I've repeated that repeatedly in my emails. Do not give out my identity because, by God, I do not want a target painted on my back because that's what would happen. Drop 2 says, blockchains and digital currency is only as secure as the server farm. What's your opinion of cryptocurrency, Bill? Marshall and I have totally different opinions about it. I won't get into it just now because it's not quite on topic and there's a bunch of talk about with this. So I didn't really I tried to guilt trip the poor tech. I knew he couldn't do anything, but I tried to guilt trip him. I said, last email I sent him, well, I hope you can sleep nights. Repeatedly, and couched in different terms. But I basically said, you got a site out here that's there for killing people. I hope you sleep well at night knowing this. So that didn't go anywhere. So I said to myself, I hate getting law enforcement involved in stuff, but who's the right person to call for this? Well, I notified my local city councilwoman that this person is one of her constituents. Look at this other giant map of constituents. And this, by the way, this map of the constituents, the Trump donors, this is actually only a very small part of the central section of Lincoln. Lincoln's generally kind of a red city, so there's Trump supporters everywhere. So I would send my city councilwoman an email and said, hey, you might want to look at this because a bunch of your constituents are in physical danger. I got nothing. Send it to my mayor. Same thing. A bunch of your constituents are in danger. I got nothing. Called to my governor's office. Well, we don't do anything with campaigns. I said, no. This has nothing to do with campaigns. This has to do with people who are being targeted for murder. Look up. You're sitting in front of a computer. Go to donaldtrump.watch right now and you tell me what you see. She said, well, we'll pass off your concerns to the governor, blah, 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 which is what they always say when they're just trying to blow you off. So then I said to myself, what's the next thing to do? I called the FBI, and they have a site that's supposed to be for cybercrime. I said, nope, ain't gonna do it. I'm not going to report something via a website because that means it's going to mix in with all of the other people who are putting stuff on websites. Half of them are cranks. So I said, okay, I'm going to call these guys directly. So I called the Omaha, Nebraska field office. And I said, I need to talk to an agent. And they sent me off to an agent. I said, look at your computer right now. Go to donaldtrump.watch. Go to it while I'm sitting here on the phone with you. I said, put in an Omaha zip code. And because that's all it required was just a zip code. Put in an Omaha zip code and then click on one of the things and you tell me what you see. And she said, oh. And I said, yeah. I said, there's people's lives at stake here, given the current political climate. She said, yeah, I get it. So I let her go off with that, thinking, okay, I got somebody on the phone with a little bit of authority who actually saw what the problem was. Well, interesting thing happened on the 23rd of this month. Drop of truth is Johnny says, I can see my house. Yes, exactly. Yeah. They could see anybody's house. Anybody who donated to Trump, that would be on there. And the amounts are so trivial. I mean, sometimes you can see this guy had, my neighbor has $1,575. You could get, donations down as low as $2 or $3 because all it was doing was accessing a Federal Election Commission database of donors for any party. It was just specifically working at Trump. Drop of Truth is asking if it's truly anonymous. Is it a viable and secure place to store funds? If done properly, yes, securely, but that doesn't imply stability of the currency. That's my major problem with cryptocurrencies. People you talk to in cryptocurrencies really bug the crap out of me. Because when you bring up the concept of intrinsic value, they say there is no such thing as intrinsic value, which technically is true. But if you look at something like gold, silver, platinum, palladium, hell, any precious metal, you could say, okay, well, this has had an agreed upon value for centuries, right? You get into cryptocurrencies and the value of the currency is whatever the people who own it, state that it is. It has no stability whatsoever because it has nothing that I would call intrinsic value. It is, to me, a speculator thing. If you've got money and you want to speculate, well, if I'd had any brains, because here's me, I'm thinking, nobody's going to want anything that's basically just a couple of nanoseconds of current, a couple of microamps of current across a couple of nanoseconds of time, because that's all it really is. You can make more electricity by scuffing your shoes on a shag carpet and touching a doorknob. And I said to myself, nobody's going to want this. Well, stupid me. If I get a time machine, I'm going to go back into the year 2000. I'm going to say, oh, dumbass, when Bitcoin becomes a thing, buy it. All that you can, keep buying it until December of 2017. Sell it the first week of December 2017. You will be a fracking millionaire. Shows you what I know about people's gullibility. I still think it's not very stable. But it's if you want to speculate, it's a good thing to own. Did they shut down the website? Hey, Jeanette, Titan Bucks. Going to talk about that just momentarily here. Marshall says the way to make crypto money in crypto is to channel trade, making money off of the periodic rise and fall of the cryptocurrency versus a stable currency. Yeah, and it does rise and fall. It does rise and fall. Abso-frackin-lutely. So like I say, I called the FBI because they told me, the only way I could deal with this at Amazon Web Services was I could talk to their customer, and by God, I didn't want to do that. Or I could get an injunction against them, and I said, well, I haven't got any money for an attorney, but I did stick the FBI on them. And lo and behold, on the 23rd of this month, that website changed dramatically. If you go to it now, the functionality is damn near broken. It says that you can look things up by, zip code and who voted, whether it's, Republican, and, it looks more neutral. But a bunch of the functionality disappeared. A bunch of the stuff that has to do with, maps and specific donations and things like that in terms of pins on a map, that kind of disappeared. But I don't expect that's going to be that way for long. Because that flip from the top website to the bottom one, because now it goes, if you go to donaldtrump.watch, it will immediately take you, just send you straight to a sister site that was registered also with the same registration company, Dynadot, and it was registered at roughly the same time as donaldtrump.watch, and didn't go online at quite the same time. But now, if you go here, it just sends you straight here. And it looks more neutral. Technically it is, but a lot of the functionality went away. And I don't know if that had anything to do with me calling and sicking the FBI on them less than 24 hours before. I don't know. I'd like to think so, but I don't know. And I know there were other people who were making noises at them about the same time. And I was on social media saying, call the FBI. Don't do stuff on their cyber media. Just call them, ask to see an agent, point them to this website, and let them see for themselves. So there was a dramatic change just a couple of days ago, a few days ago, on the 23rd, about a week ago. It flipped over overnight. Marshall's talking about increasing his initial stake by 1,400% over the past 5 years, doing the above. Yeah. Drop Zeus says, when I go to car shows, the owners say my car, 1973 Valiant Charger, is fully restored and worth $80,000 plus Australian. My response, only if someone's willing to pay that. Not intrinsic value, real value. Yeah. So anyway, this site dramatically changed. I don't think it's going to stay that way. If I was the morons running this site, donaldtrump.watch, and the FBI got sicked on me, maybe by enough people calling, or maybe they got scared because Amazon Web Services was talking to them. I don't know. I have no idea what was going on in the background. All I know is I called the FBI, and that sucker flipped. I'm sorry, flipped earlier this week. This site has been in existence for some time. But donaldtrump.watch flipping down to donor.watch has just happened this week in a very short period of time, correlating with about the time I was sicking the FBI on them. And the FBI can, in fact, issue an injunction. But here's the thing. And by the way, I have a link in my description box if you don't believe me about donaldtrump.watch. Well, of course, the internet never forgets. So I have a link in my description box to the Internet Archive snapshots. You can see how the site changed over time and how it just flipped off and started going to donor.watch instead. Drop 2 says, in for cleverer than I am, Marshall. Yeah, anywhere he goes, Marshall's the smartest guy in the room. Absolutely. Extremely few currencies, Marshall says, that are backed by anything substantive these days. Yes, that's certainly true. It's one of the problems with the U.S. dollar. It's not backed by anything. In real life, it's worth no more than the paper it's printed on. Fort Knox has been empty since the film Goldfinger. I don't know what happened with Fort Knox. I don't think it's empty. It's just that in terms of the U.S. dollar, it certainly doesn't matter anymore. I don't know for sure whose money we're keeping there anymore. But again, if you go to that the link to the Internet Archive that I've got below, you can see a cached copy of it from only a few days ago. If you want to go back and look at the snapshots they've taken, you can see how this top one has evolved, because when it finally went down, it wasn't saying Americans that give money to support a racist. It was just saying nasty things about Trump. But clearly a site that was intended solely for one reason, and then that's to target and kill Trump supporters. I don't think that this is going to stay the same. Functionality right now is so broken that it just doesn't work very well. I think this site is just sitting there waiting for the election to be over, and it'll flip back up to this site. I would be very surprised, given the crap that last time I checked it anyway. And this is all very evolving, which is why I don't have prepared remarks on it. But it's all very evolving, and the last time that I checked with this site, Donor.watch, it didn't work with crap. Nowhere near as easy as the original one. I think that after the election, if Trump wins, it's going to flip back to this site, because it is, in fact, nothing. That site was nothing more than an intentional site that was there to give its users the ability to instantly track a Trump donor for death. I mean, I had a cousin that said this. What did they think they were going to do? Send them flowers after the election? That site could only have one purpose. So when you see me whining about how I'm very worried that we're this close, less than a week away from a shooting civil war, there it is. It's right there. The bad thing about this is, Marshall says, high probability of the site going hot if Trump wins. Like I say, if you go to the Donor Watch one, it sucks. You can't track nothing. This, all they have to do, flipping from one side to the other in the way that they did it, is really easy. I've done it myself a million times. It's easy to say, okay, if somebody goes to DonaldTrump.watch, send them somewhere else. Easy. It's something any good systems administrator can do in about 5 minutes. If you've configured things correctly, it'll take effect almost immediately. It's just a really easy thing to do. And this site sucks so bad that I can't. I mean, Marshall said it would be easy to fix. I take his word because he's the programmer. I'm a system administrator guy. If it's that easy to do, in the last couple of days, they haven't made any progress whatsoever on this site. I think it's just there as a dummy. And if Trump wins, we're going back to this one so that leftists know where to geolocate simply by tapping on their phone someone's information and get a map straight to where they live, right down to their house. This is all rather terrifying. Marshall says, thank God I only donate through my LLC. Like I say, I have that one that was my neighbor 4 doors down. Keep your ammo dry. I think you're going to need it. Anyhow, I think the ultimate problem with this is this. It is a side effect of a law that was intended to do something good. Drop of Truth says, is the maximum taxation 30% for an LLC like in Australia? I don't know that. I've never had an LLC, so I don't know. Marcia could probably answer that. But what this ultimately boils down to is a quirk in the law. The donor's information is supposed to be public, not because you're supposed to be able to track down an individual per se, but to find out, okay, are big corporations donating to them? How much? Basically it's saying we want to see who is bribing our candidates. It was never intended to be used in this way, which is to track and give directions to anyone who had donated to Trump, no matter how small. This map right here with the ticks on it, just a small part of Lincoln. It really is a very small part. And look at them all. And you could click them all except the blue one. I don't know what this blue one was doing. I don't know what blue stood for. It was the only thing that you couldn't click on there. And I'd be shocked if Trump wins. I'd be shocked if this site didn't go back. This one is such crap. that I'd be stunned if it wasn't just there for dummy purposes, to keep them out of trouble because I called the FBI, or maybe enough people did, because I know I wasn't the only one. But I certainly got that FBI agent's attention, because I said, before I do anything here, I want you, get a computer in front of you, I want you to go to DonaldTrump.watch. Just go there, tell me what you see, click things, tell me what you got. Oh, look, you can, share their information on social media just by clicking a button. If I hadn't redacted this black spot here that shows the name and address, if you're on a phone, tap that and you suddenly are into Google Maps or whatever is on the iOS side. This site is intended for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to help leftists locate and murder Trump supporters. It's just that simple. There is no other reason for that site to exist. And if it doesn't come back, if Trump wins, I will be stunned. We are headed for a shooting civil war, and it is next fracking week. Keep your ammo dry, because I think you're going to need it. Oh, is blue the zip code entered? Okay, I didn't know that. Could be. I wasn't paying that much attention to that. Okay, I'll take your word for that. I just went, can't click on that. That's weird. Well, let's see, there's just stuff here. Will affect the campaign donations from now on. I doubt it. Not too many people are aware of this site. Very few people were actually aware of it when I got aware of it. Not many people that I knew were aware of it. But it's, I think what really needs to happen is, while I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing to know who is, bribing our candidates. Excuse me. There's no reason for the majority of this to be made public. I think if you could say, okay, they need to change the law that says, okay, anyone who donates, say, of course, the problem is you can get very small donations that add up. I don't know what you do. Maybe you just say we're not going to make this information public anymore. I don't know. We'll see what happens. If Trump wins, I think this is nothing but a hit list site that is providing information, and I'd be shocked if it didn't flip back. This site here, the bottom one where it's going now, sucks. I mean, it really sucks. It is nothing like the functionality that the DonaldTrump.watch one has. So I think if he wins, it'll just flip back to this one, and we'll be seeing people dying as a result. Amazon Web Services, I told you. I hate saying I told you so, but I'm telling you, these people are headed to try to kill people. The leftists are going to kill people if Trump wins, and there's just no way around it. And this site at the top is assisting them. It is, enabling them to easily go and find people that they know were Trump supporters and to kill them, including the person just a few blocks down from me. Not even a few blocks, because the way that the city works, it is just 4 or 5 doors down on the same side of the street. For God's sake, I'm keeping my ammo handy in case they come after him. I can imagine drive-bys. Sites for one purpose and one purpose only. It is a hit list for Trump supporters. Just that. Please send a link to the site on Twitter. It's real simple. DonaldTrump.watch. All one word, DonaldTrump.watch. WATCH. I've got it linked in my description box. But again, it's not showing this site right now, because I think they got pressured. It's showing this crap site that doesn't work very well. And if Trump is elected, it'll flip back to this overnight. In minutes. In point of fact, I'm going to do, I'm going to cover the election next week. It's going to be a long one, a long stream. I'm going to cover that because I want to see what happens afterwards. And one of the things I'll be checking is what happens with this site. Put up a site with that for Biden contributors that say they're labeled for Trump. Marshall, feel free. I ultimately think that if government won't do anything, which they probably don't even understand the problem. People in my senator that I kept trying to get a hold of for that other thing, he doesn't know anything about this. He's blithering in it when it comes to IT. He doesn't know what to do. But if you put one up there that was like this one, but for Biden supporters, I think you get into a place here where maybe the only thing to do is have a balance of power. If they put up theirs, it's the Chicago way. They pull out a knife, you pull out a gun. They put one of yours in the hospital, you put one of theirs in the morgue. That's the Chicago way. That is a balance of power. If they put up a site like this for Trump, you put up one for Biden. Keep the balance of power. It's about the only thing I can think of. Because, like I say, I'd be amazed if that didn't flip back. I'd just be amazed. Watch the site. Absolutely, Larry. I will be on election night. Arrested Antifa goons. Yeah, right, like they're going to do that. That isn't going to happen. You get a target from him. So that's my general thoughts about this. Watch this site, DonaldTrump.watch. Link in my description box. And a link in there, of course, to the Internet Archives, one of their snapshots. I think it was like near the end of when the site, just before the site flipped. But you can see the whole thing as it evolved over time. And it got a lot more hits like the day before it flipped. So it may be just enough, people who are on the right saw it and they went, oh my God, my name and address are right here for anybody to click and get map directions to and call authorities or something like that. And like I say, the FBI agent that I spoke to was like, oh, that's bad. And I was like, yeah, that's real bad. Okay, that's my commentary on that. There isn't a hell of a lot else to say about it except watch it. It's dangerous. I would like to know who put it up. Amazon Web Services, if you're watching, I know they're a customer, but you got to have some ethics. If I was running that service, if I'm CEO of or vice president in charge of Amazon Web Services and I saw this service, I would say, oh, okay, time to terminate this customer, kick them off. Thank you very much. We don't need your check. We have ethics, but apparently they don't, because there's no legal reason they couldn't kick them off. If they've got a site like this, Amazon Web Services could kick them out if they wanted to, but they just don't want to. The money. Excuse me. Starseas Player says, I checked it out after seeing you post on Twitter. Yeah, I could see exactly how to walk to people's houses from my home. Yep, exactly. You got sent to Twitter jail yesterday for stating that Joe Biden is now ineligible to run for the presidency because of the Hunter leaks. Oh, God, we can't talk about those. Oh, can't talk about those. They'll kick me out. And by the way, I have a second thing to talk about a little later on that has to do with that exact same thing that they're doing. They started a website for YouTubers. Yes, Marshall says, what is this ethics word that I'm using? Yeah, they don't have it. Again, if it was me and I became aware of that, I'd be like, oh, Jesus, I don't want any of that on our servers. No, get them away. We'll take the porn. As long as they ain't the kiddie porn. We'll take the porn, but these guys are out. These guys are, okay, the shotgun, let's get in the car, and there he is. That's the only reason that site would exist. There would be no valid reason for that site to exist. It's just exploiting a quirk in the law, as often happens. He said, oh, we can get into the FEC stuff? That means that we can get into people's addresses and put a website up there with pins and a Google map, and they can easily zoom in, zoom out. I imagine they could go to the Street View if they wanted to. That's horrifying. It's just a horrifying site. Blacklist with YouTubers that disagree with the left. Going to be talking about that in a bit, as a matter of fact. Yeah, he's still eligible. He'd have to be convicted of a felony. Yeah, he's eligible. I just don't know why anybody would vote for him, given what we know. But again, it's hard to get that information out there because the press, the social media sites, tech giants are all trying to suppress that information. I don't think I can talk about it directly. They killed me midstream when I talked about that one film that Netflix had whose audience makes people uncomfortable. I don't know for sure what I can say that might not get me killed. So I'm going to have to be, it's like the virus, I have to be roundabout in talking about it. But if you know what's on that stuff, how could you vote for the man? He's clearly been enriching himself at the expense of U.S. Foreign policy for decades. And the guy is an out-and-out racist. There's just no question about it. So, other thing I'm going to talk about. Let me know if I'm not 5 by 5, because I wasn't when I went to this a couple of weeks ago. Looks like I've got some good sound coming through. Let me know if it sucks. Looks okay. I got about a 5-second lag, so tell me if it sucks. I wanted to review. Oh, God. Larry says Clintons have been lining their pockets too. Yeah, there's certainly, lots of indirect evidence, circumstantial evidence to say that. Fortunately, they're out. It's one of the things when Trump was elected, I wasn't particularly thrilled to see him elected, but what I was thrilled to see was finally, after most of my adult life, when you take into account how Bill Clinton had been governor of Arkansas and then president, and then Hillary was senator and she was, Secretary of State, I was like, oh, God. It was a relief because finally, we were going to be done with those idiots. Finally. So they're pretty much in the rearview mirror, thank God. I mean, seriously, they were with us most of my adult life. The entire time that my children were growing up, the Clintons were around. Seeing the back of them was okay with me. Star Trek mode. Love the original bridge. Yes, thank you. Read Political's Thing, Inc., back when reporters did reporting. Yeah, they don't. Well, they never really have. But they are clearly just propagandizing now for the Democrats. Absolutely. So I do want to talk because I can't look away from the train wreck that is now Star Trek, because I've been with this franchise since 1967. My very first memory, in fact, is of an alien animal called the Mugatu that Marshall will know. That was my very first memory from 1967. So I've been with this franchise. I can't look away from it, even though I risk losing some of my politics viewers. For those of you who like to hear me talk about science fiction, you're going to hear me talk about this. I don't know that I'll do it every single Thursday, but, I had to talk about it. Larry says, STD is garbage. Yeah, that's why we call it an STD. Everybody who likes the show wants us to call it disco, but it's STD as far as I'm concerned. And, I have a video out there, and there is no escaping the woke, that talks about how this show's target demographic is actually the woke. And I think they've done a good job of actually, getting that audience in. It's pretty obvious when you start to, talk to them, because they turn completely nuts and insane. Mentioned before, I had one Twitter user that went on an insane multi-tweet rant about how I'm a fascist because I like the original series over the rest of the franchise. I'm like, my first memory was the original series. What the hell do you think I'm going to like most? But apparently nowadays, original series cast movies are fascist. Who knew? Marshall says, did you see Greenwald resigned? Yes, from his own news org, The Intercept, because they censored this article about that person we shouldn't mention. Yeah, I did. Actually, somebody with a level of integrity. I thought that was a word that nobody in the press even knew. Happy to see that. Unfortunately, it isn't going to stop them. Big tech and the, I only call the media industrial complex. Maybe there's a technology industrial complex and a media industrial complex and a military industrial complex now. But I don't see them changing because of what he did, and apparently nobody else in the press has the slightest ounce of integrity, because if they did, they'd all be quitting. Just ridiculous. Marshall says STD is deep in sci-fi, but not so much Star Trek. I have a video, I believe it's called Star Trek is No Longer Star Trek, where I took one of Marshall's manuscripts and basically read it. He really hits it on the nose as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, president of the media propaganda complex now. Larry says they love their labels. Yeah, the woke love their labels, and that's why I'm a fascist. It's good sci-fi, but not so much Star Trek. Dropsy says, STD, where MacGuffins rule because writers are so stupid and scientifically illiterate. Yeah. Well, here's my take on it. I have to remind myself, the year for this program is now 3189. I give this show a rating of about 3 out of 5, but that's because you have to know where my scale is. I have become so used to anything that Alex Kurtzman makes being complete trash. Anything with his name on it sucks. I've gotten so used to that my scale is now down close to where dinosaur bones are. On my scale, number 1 is existentially, threateningly bad. You could die from watching this. It's so horrible. To 5, which is passable. It's not going to be great. I've never seen anything on this show that would, it's great. So 3 out of 5, halfway towards passable. It doesn't insult my intelligence like some of last week's did. It doesn't make me want to projectile vomit like some of the episodes do. There isn't any swearing. There's no, horrible gore. They actually did something sort of Star Trek-ian in it. I'll talk about that. But it's not any good. It's like Marshall says, it's good science fiction, just not very good Star Trek. There's a difference. 3189 is where the time agent on Enterprise came from. I didn't know that. I thought it was back a couple of centuries, but it's not like they care. Near as I can tell, they've only watched maybe one of the writers watched a little bit of Deep Space Nine. But not enough. The woke Starseed player says, have no idea what a real Nazi is. Well, I'm one, according to them. I read that long screed that this guy went off on as a result of seeing something that one of my videos I did on YouTube. I didn't bother engaging him. There's no point engaging those people. You can never change their mind. You can't even have a rational conversation with them. And I didn't care because at my level with YouTube, it's good exposure. Because even though he went off on a rant, he still shared my video, which then caused people to watch that video because they wanted to see the horrible fascist. Even if they hate me, they're still watching the video. It's still numbers. If they then go on and agree with this guy and start tweeting out how terrible I am, they're still going to share my video. So I'm okay with that. He can think whatever hell he wants. There's a phrase that's been lost from the public lexicon. I just totally lost. It's real simple. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Just words. Now, I always have to remind myself, even when I'm getting angry, and I've had a lot of years to get angry. James Dixon. Excuse me. James Dixon. Had a lot of years to get angry, and I have to remind myself 90% of the time that these are people that I don't know, that I'll never meet, that I haven't known very long. It's not like Marshall, who I've never met in person, but I've spoken to him on the phone, known him for 30 years. I consider him a friend. But, you get into most people on the internet, they're not anybody I'm ever going to see. If you really think about it, if you really are thinking about getting pissed off by what somebody's saying about you on the internet, always remember that to you, these are just words on a screen. It's not you don't have to think of it as a person actually trying to piss you off. It's just words on a screen. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That's what I go for. Drop 2 says, The Expanse is out soon. Yeah. Hope it doesn't get bogged down in politics like last season. Yeah. Marshall says he's a huge Expanse fanboy. So am I. Yeah. Who made the video about me? Nobody has that I'm aware of. If they had, I would have responded to that. This was a multi-tweet rant that it's like 15 tweets about how terrible I am. It is bang, 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 bang. And like I said, I didn't bother engaging. If somebody made a video about me, that would be wonderful. I love piggybacking off of someone else's success. Somebody made a video about me, I would make a response video just to be argumentative. Yeah, pretty much. Excuse me, if they said something nice to me, I probably wouldn't make a response video. But if they said something that I felt I needed to respond to, I am happy to piggyback off of someone else's success. I'm going to run out of this, and I'm going to need to go and put my emergency trailer on at some point. Okay, the episode, which was entitled People of Earth. It was, like I say, 3 out of 5, with 1 being existentially, threateningly bad, and 5 being passable. And it didn't really rise to the level of passable for me. Marshall says it also helps to have a sufficient vocabulary and the ability to think logically. Yes, that makes one a Nazi nowadays. Anyone who can beat them in an argument. Yes, well, the woke don't even argue. They just blather on. Is all they do. And this show is made for the woke. That is, I now believe it. I have experimentally, I mentioned this before. I have experimentally on Facebook or Twitter, when they start going off, as they inevitably do, then blah, 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 blah. You don't like this show. That means you're a fascist, blah, blah, blah. You can't have any legitimate criticism of this show because it means you're a fascist, blah, blah, blah. I will sometimes just just experimentally, because I don't care. It's just words for me. I'll say, oh, you're a leftist, are you? Boom! Oh, God, you're a fascist, horrible, a sexist, homophobic, Nazi Trump supporter. I'm like, okay, you're a leftist. Because I don't care if they yell at me. I couldn't care less. James Dixon. Excuse me. James Dixon. Excuse me. I don't care. So I just do it experimentally. I mean, I'm rationally saying, okay, what happens if you do that? Every single time. This show's target audience is the woke, and it has found that audience. It is doing that. It has done that. Marcel says, just ask them to bait you publicly, they run. And they mostly just call you names. I've gotten to the point where I have one person on there who will pipe in anytime I have something to say. And it's always the same insanity, and I just have a little meme up. It's a red alert sign from Star Trek movies that says troll, alert, condition troll. And anytime he posts anything, I just say alert, condition troll. He'll come back and try to say something, alert, condition troll. It's just me. I'll do that until they get tired and go away. There's no other thing you need to do. It's pointless. You can't have a rational discussion with them. And that's why you can't have a rational discussion with them about Star Trek Discovery. Now, whenever I'm reviewing something, always like to go in and say, what works? What was good? Because, even if something's, I don't think, very good, oftentimes there's at least snippets here that you could do. Well, this one was directed by Jonathan Frakes, who's a little better known among Star Trek fans as having been played Commander Riker in Star Trek The Next Generation. He did go on to a pretty successful directing career, which is pretty much all he does now. He has directed for Star Trek Discovery before and other Star Trek projects. Drops his things they can't debate. They immediately hit emotionally overload when pressed. Yeah, ad hominem attacks and all. Yeah, they just go nuts. You can't. Alert, condition, troll. You can't deal with them. Just do that till they go away. They eventually get tired. So Jonathan Frakes' direction here was not bad. It's okay. It's not outstanding. There's nothing in here that you'd look at and say, wow, that was, very effectively shot. It was appropriate to what was going on. There's nothing. It wasn't bad. You can say that about it. The directing wasn't bad. Discovering that Saru being the right choice for captain. Yeah, of course it is. That's good. He's the only consistently intelligent and capable character on this show. And no, Burnham commanding a ship has never been for her. She says, it's not really for me. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That was proven when she, mutinied and then began a war in which billions of people died. And frankly, she should have died in prison in season 1. I mean, do we need to Berman to figure out that Saru is okay? Oh, that's right, of course. She's Mary Sue, and nothing can ever happen without her. Actually, not having her in the last episode, was a very welcome break. By the way, I have to tell you, most people use the term Mary Sue wrong. Mary Sue really originally was very simple. In fan stories, fan fiction, where I saw it, in the 1970s. It may have predated that, but I saw it in the 70s a lot with fanzines with Star Trek. Mary Sues were invariably characters very much like the female authors who were inserted into stories, with regular casts of like Star Trek and how, the crew and how they'd always love them and there wasn't anything that they could do without them and all that. It was really a projection of the author themselves. I don't think we got the projection of the author or showrunner themselves. Maybe we do. But boy, otherwise, she and Mary Sue. And they can't do anything without her. The last week without her was, I was like, yes, it's bad, but it isn't, horrifying because she ain't there. Talking about the Fuppets last week and his friend. Mary Sue started an original series. Yeah, that's where I noticed it, was fan fiction for Star Trek, the original series in fanzines. But I don't know that it doesn't predate that. I don't know. Fanzines go way back almost 100 years now. So it's very possible that maybe in fan fiction, even 1950s, maybe you had something where somebody was writing Forbidden Planet fan fiction and inserted themselves in there. But I certainly saw it more, really starting for me, in the 1970s and female-written fan fiction. They would insert themselves into the story. And otherwise, whether they're inserting somebody or not, you know, she certainly fits the description. She's nothing can happen without her. It has to totally focus on her. You know, the question of Saru being captain or not was never a question in my mind. The guy's that's one of the bright spots. He's good at his job. The actor who plays him is good at what he does. He's not having her around was a relief last week. So anyway, why is Saru bitching later on about being captain? I mean, Burnham, you know, shouldn't even be under consideration for it. They did. This is a bright spot. They did do some Star Trek level sort of diplomacy, kind of, for once, rather than doing something stupid like the Vulcan hello. The 1,000-year-old tree at Starfleet Academy, I thought was a nice little touch. I thought that was nice. It was one of the few moments that I thought worked. You know, if you're going to be time traveling like that, and you go back to a place where you'd spent, you know, 4 or more years of your life, and, you know, maybe you spend some time under this tree and you come back and, my God, it's a 1,000-year-old oak or something. I thought that was a good moment. I thought that worked really well. If there'd been more moments like that, it wouldn't have been such a horrible show. But what doesn't work, the whole bit, and anything, the premise about the Federation. The premise of the Federation is continuing to be explosive diarrhea on Gene Roddenberry's grave. Let me explain that. Roddenberry was very much an optimist when it came to humanity and when it came to our ability to work together. And it is, you know, one of the reasons that, you know, the background behind me, it exemplified that for the 1960s by having no racism in a place where you have Japanese people working, where you have black women working. You know, you could have a Russian in the middle of the freaking Cold War. You know, that was intentionally very representative of how humanity was going to grow and get rid of all of our bad problems. And then you got into Star Trek: The Next Generation, and his view on humanity did up the ante quite a lot. He really thought that by then humanity would be much more evolved and just totally beyond this stuff. So anytime, and I don't care what the pretext is for having the format, you know, the Federation, the United Federation of Planets, was really Gene Roddenberry's embodiment of what Star Trek should be. You know, that was his embodiment. It was a group of planets came together, worked together peacefully for a long period of time. You know, maybe getting a little argument here and there, but you go, you know, to Babel Council or something, and you know, talk it out, and everything's cool. So Federation was his exemplification of what Star Trek meant. When you destroy the Federation, for any reason, it doesn't matter how dramatic it is or if you're going to try to bring it back. When you destroy it, you have just crapped on Gene Roddenberry's grave, and you have missed the entire point of what Star Trek is about. The Federation really ought to be something that survives more or less indefinitely, you know, and for no reason, any plot reason, should you ever get rid of it. Just done. Drop 2 says, Michael Burton killed millions by her accidents, but saved the past, and will probably save the future too. Yes, well, she's a Mary Sue. You know, she's practically perfect in every way. There's nothing you can do without her. In some general notes, good God, the pace, just like always, is God awfully slow. In any other part of this franchise, they'd have just, you know, set course for Earth and then ejected the next 15 plus minutes, because God was it slow. It just, I talked about this in other places. I noticed this first when I was watching the early 2000s TV series Charmed, late 1990s, early 2000s. And the only reason I watched that, and I'm perfectly straightforward about it, is because it had 3 hot women on it. And from time to time, you'd see things like Alyssa Milano in pasties when she's playing a mermaid. That's why I watched that show. But I certainly noticed it there, and I noticed it in other shows like the CW ones, where they're having some good type of action, things are moving right along, and then put on the brakes for some useless whining between characters. And for 15 solid minutes, that happened. And it happened throughout. But I noticed at the beginning, you know, they had this decision, are we going to go to Earth? Okay, set a course. Bingo, we're there. You know, or use the stupid spore drive, and then bingo, we're there. For eject the next 15 minutes. I'm really hoping that some fan eventually comes out with a fan edit, and that takes an entire season and turns it only into 2 or 3 hours by ejecting all the crap. Because really, any part of the other franchise, I think this story could probably be done in about 2 to 3 hours, tops. Drop Two says a whole round, a lot of rotund backsides, double chins, and STD today. STD replicator primary food. It is candy, obviously. I never know quite how to judge that, other than these costumes are not flattering for anyone who is not anorexic. You don't see it on TV, but you can look at me. I am kind of overweight. I'm actually losing. This is the first time I've been able to get this vest down 1, 2, 3, 4 buttons in weeks. I put on weight during this, not being able to go places like the gym, and I'm now down to 4 buttons. I had been only 3. You couldn't see it because of the way the camera's put. So these costumes are not even remotely flattering for anybody who has a normal weight. I tell the story, but I'll tell it again. I had occasion once to meet Deborah Winger, who was, at the time I met her in the 80s, a passable movie star. She was an attractive woman on screen. Met her in person, shook her hand, and just about recoiled because she was so skin and bones. It was like touching a warm skeleton. That's what these people have to be, women particularly, in order to look good in those uniforms. You got to be anorexic. And, you get somebody like Tilly, who has really more of a normal weight, but she looks terrible. Just looks terrible in those uniforms. And it's true of anybody. I mean, if they gain some weight over the season, between the seasons, they're going to look terrible in those uniforms because they really only look good. Really only look good on people who are, very thin. It's the reason why in the original cast movies they went to those, jackets. Because by then, those characters, with a few exceptions, Leonard Nimoy was always skinny, but everybody was starting to gain a little weight as they got older. And those jackets, and the bomber jackets in particular, they look good on Scotty because they hid some of his rotundness. But that's why they went to those uniforms. And if they were smart, they'd do something like that here. They'd make a uniform that looked good on anybody. But they don't. They have a uniform that only looks good on people who are anorexic. Hey, marketing coordinator, how you doing tonight? Drop2 says, more walking, more talking with crying and hugging. Yes, exactly. Is this an Aaron Sorkin series? No, they're intelligent. Oh, God, yeah. As I say, that was one of the things, man, the pace. Just slow as molasses in January most of the time. And for no good reason, like you say, walking and talking and crying. And, why? Like I say, okay, use the spore drive, go to Earth, eject 15 minutes right out of the beginning. I think if you had a good fan editor, which I'm not a fan editor, just for God's sake, go out there and take any season of Star Trek Discovery and turn it into a 3-hour thing. Because I don't think that would, if you cut all the crap, you really would have only about 3 hours of good, anything good in there. Which, by the way, oddly enough, you're talking about the uniforms, that was actually next to my list of notes. They look terrible. If you take somebody like Nichelle Nichols, right, in the 60s, beautiful, beautiful woman. If you put her in one of these, she'd look awful. She would look fat. A beautiful woman, but, with a uniform like that, it has to be something where somebody is incredibly skinny. And she'd look fat. There's... she's flying around. Burnham, Mary Sue, is flying around in a spaceship that has some kind of outboard wings that are not attached to the ship. Okay, whatever. Okay, why Burnham and Book are such good friends? Why is this? Other than to obviously set up a future romantic couple. We're telegraphing again, guys. Romantic couple coming in. Just tell it. And didn't he have a trading business so that he could, make ends meet? And by the way, writers, it is always better to show rather than tell. One of the problems with Star Wars, the prequel trilogy, is like, for example, when Obi-Wan and Anakin, you first see them in first time in episode 2, they're going at the elevator and they're talking about all these adventures that they've had. That sucks. We don't want to see people talking about things they had. We want to see people doing. So I think if they'd done this smart, what they would have done is spend a couple of episodes with just Burnham and Book. Don't tell us how they got to be friends. Show us how they got to be friends. Because the last time we saw him, she was punching him out every 5 minutes. I think she attacked him like 3 times for reasons that I couldn't figure out. So how do they get from there to, oh, you're my incredible trusted friend? He's a boy, he's a friend, but he's not my boyfriend. But again, it's the incoming romantic couple. How is it that Burnham's communicator can sense Discovery's arrival? Because communicators are relatively short-range communications devices. It's been established since forever. All the other series, all you have to do to get out of range of one is really go very far beyond standard orbit. And God, why are they still? This one really bothers me. Why are they still keeping Georgiou around? She should either be in the brig permanently or left stranded on some remote planet, or just kill her. She's a liability, plain and simple, always has been. She should sure hell not be allowed to run around in an admiral's uniform for any reason. Sorry, I should have taken one look and just said, oh, you're an ensign from now on. She's a complete liability. She attacks people mid-diplomacy. Stun this woman, throw her in the brig. Like, I don't know, last season at the beginning sometime. I don't know how. I have no idea why they keep her around. Drop 2 says, Bud Bill, Book and Burnham can't work. Where's the diversity? Burnham should have been after an affair with a robot. Yeah. The Burnham communicator looked like a beige flip phone. Very bad design. I think they may have been trying to do a bit of a callback, sort of, to the Cage and Where No Man Gone Before, where the communicator props hadn't really been perfected yet, and they were kind of big and bulky. I think that may have been the intent, but regardless, they'd have to come out like right on top of her for her to be able to use the communicator. I thought that the whole point last week of that guy in that station who was looking for other, signs of Federation activity, that would have been the dude that called her and said, "Hey, we just gotta, or maybe she shows up there and he says, "Hey, we know where Discovery is," or something. No, she just apparently picks up your communicator. It's just dumb. Why are they keeping Book? They said so under guard, but not Georgiou. She's a threat. She is a known threat, proven liability. And there's a point at which they talk about, Sarah says, "Oh, we're getting used to it and all that." Well, what the hell? Discovery just got there. How are they where did they find the time to adjust? I guess when they're walking and talking and whining and crying, all that stuff that could be ejected. The whole thing is just brand new for them. We should see them all basically spending the rest of the season trying to get adjusted. And at least Tilly has something of a normal reaction, although it's couched in a lot of whining and crying, stuff that I'd eject if I was doing a fan edit of this. Okay, Book's cloak on his ship was really inconsistent for me. I had a lot of questions about it. Did they move the dilithium on his ship, or can he, maybe I missed it, but can he selectively cloak something anywhere in the ship? If in Discovery, if he's in their shuttle bay, does that mean he can cloak things inside the ship? Do they move the dilithium to his ship? I don't know. Does he need to be cloaked in order for him to have cloaked the dilithium? And by the way, if so, that shuttle bay is now all useless. I thought if they're going to keep him there for any length of time, which I thought they were going to do so they could hide their dilithium, but they make the shuttle bay useless because it would completely fill the shuttle bay and there's no room for anything else. And they didn't, and he cloaked and they didn't move anything out of the way, and nobody keeps bumping into the damn thing. I had a lot of questions about how that stupid thing worked and how they were going to do it. Maybe I missed it. Who knows? Drop 2 says, here's a sixth thought. Maybe could STD and Picard and ST Picard meet? I wouldn't be surprised if we don't find out that this burn thing or whatever it is was a result of something that Picard did in later seasons. Who the hell knows? Just a little thing. If they can spore jump to anywhere, why did they spore jump to Jupiter and then spend about 5 seconds getting from Jupiter to Earth? I mean, yeah, it's kind of been established that when you go fast enough, they're right there. But why don't they just show up at Earth? The weapons in the 30th centuries are awfully huge. They're gigantic. Saw it in the first episode and this one. Considering that as far back as the original series, they had a phaser that could fit in the palm of your hand. It was a little box about this big. Why are they now gigantic? The ones in the first episode, these huge. Why? Then they take the time to say, aye, aye, Commander. No, one aye is good. We're not pirates. Hey, they've used both of these off and on through the years. Yeah, aye, sir, something like that. But we've occasionally heard aye, aye. Book keeps telling Burnham that his cat is a queen. Oh, I just know that that's going to be true. It's going to turn out that the cat is a flirkin. The cat is really a queen. If this Wen guy is a pirate, then why would destroying his ships be an act of war? Nobody bats an eye when you get the world rid of pirates. It's all good riddance. The entire planet of Earth has some kind of deflector shield. Why does Discovery need to put itself between Earth and the pirates, particularly considering we're talking about 1,000 or so years, 850 some years worth of advancements in weapons? And yeah, they took out their shields immediately. I have to ask this. Do the writers of this show understand how much larger a planet is than a spaceship? I have to ask if they know that. Drop 2 says, did an outside agency, extra-dimensional android universe, explode all dilithium by resonating with its fundamental? Who the hell knows? They're not going to get that complex about it. They're never that scientifically complex because the writers don't know what they're doing. These writers would be at home on Space 1999. Being in a battle is a perfect example of why holographic interfaces are a bad idea. We saw it in this episode. Power of us fluctuating and their control interfaces would appear and disappear. Bad idea. This is why, regardless whether you like it or not, this bridge makes more sense. Because this bridge has physical controls that do not die if their power goes off. If the power goes down, then it's going to power the ship off, maybe. But if they just get low power, Sulu can still do things at his helm because he's got buttons, switches, physical things he can do. Having those holographic interfaces looks cool, but isn't very useful actually in battle. So Burnham and Book go into space. The Discovery could tell that they left the shuttle bay, but how come that they were able to hit the shuttle bay seconds afterwards and then allow them to come to the bridge really fast and nobody seemed to notice that they put their ship in? What the hell happened? Did they transport and then come on the bridge? Did I miss something there? I don't know. Please don't insult anything by Jerry Anderson. I'm a huge fan. I grew up with it all. The only thing about Jerry Anderson in Space 99 is the whole premise is stupid. The moon blasting out of Earth's orbit couldn't happen. But some of the scripts were okay. But, in terms of the scientific believability, it's not high. Okay, why is Stamets giving the 16-year-old super genius saboteur so much information? The spore drive at the time he starts spouting off to her should have been a carefully guarded secret until they know it's safe to give it out. Star Wars cover story is that the Discovery was on an extended deep space mission and the crew are descendants of the original crew. So why is Stamets spilling the beans 5 minutes later? Well, actually 20, but you could have gotten rid of 15. And by the way, if the 16-year-old super genius saboteur with the lesbian haircut number 2 doesn't turn out to be a lesbian, I will be amazed. Look at her. You couldn't... You just know. You just know it's going to happen. I don't care. I really don't care. It's just that to me, she's so stereotypical. It is so stereotypical the way they've done her. They talk about these guys being on Titan. They didn't make it clear. Maybe, guys, Titan is a moon of the planet Saturn in our solar system. Writers, do you know this? They don't need from Titan long-range communications. They just need to fly to Earth. They should have been allied with Earth a long time ago because they're operating inside the same solar system. The way the Discovery gets there from Jupiter, which is a ways out. Saturn's farther than that, but about 5 seconds. This should not be an issue. An accident at their liquid hydrocarbon research center. Writers, do you know that you have basically just described petroleum? Like the stuff you process to put in your car engine that the woke hate? Liquid hydrocarbon? Guys. These guys have no concept of science. The trill that 16-year-old super genius saboteur lesbian haircut number 2 The Trill here has been a known species that has been known to carry symbionts as far back as when Dr. McCoy was in med school. There should be no one that should be surprised that 16-year-old saboteur super genius with lesbian haircut number 2 might be carrying a symbiont. We know this because apparently somebody was watching Deep Space Nine, or at least a little bit of it, but they kind of missed the episode Trials and Tribulations, a story that establishes that the Trill, as a known species back before Discovery was a thing. How does the human carry a non-human Trill symbiont? Again, they were watching a little bit of Deep Space Nine, but not enough. And this was a weird part because it was established in an appearance, their first appearance in Star Trek The Next Generation, that a human's body degrades quickly when they're carrying a Trill. And the weird thing about this is Jonathan Frakes should have known this. He played Riker, the guy who got the human who got the Trill, and his body started to disintegrate. I guess he's basically just beyond caring about anything but just a paycheck at this point, which, you can't blame him. It's not like he's getting a lot of acting work. Titan's oil refinery blew up. Yeah, at least you got to laugh. Yeah, it's just dumb. All things that don't work about Burnham. How is she different? She keeps saying she is. She doesn't seem any different. She's still the same insufferable Mary Sue. Tilly's speech about her being someone holding a dandelion and blowing the seeds out to be something amazing is just painful to watch. These people apparently can't do anything without Burnham because she is a Mary Sue, practically perfect in every way. She continues to be so damn self-centered that you hear her use the word I far too frequently. Unless you're something like me where I give out opinions, you shouldn't hear the word I out of people as much as you do here. Why did she expect anybody to have heard of her mother? I mean, I understand that at some point or another her mother was up in this time frame, but we're talking 1,000 years. Why is anybody... Tilly says that Berman seems lighter somehow. Well, she doesn't seem any lighter than me. She's the same insufferable Mary Sue. She's still totally untrustworthy when she leaves with Book in his ship, despite supposedly being allied with Saru, who's clearly far better at making decisions than she is. But then again, she's a giant Mary Sue. Dropper says, yes, her hair. Burnham has a Samson complex. Who the hell knows? But she has to be. She really does need to be thrown into the brig. Burnham does. She should never have been let out of prison originally. She's totally untrustworthy and unpredictable. Except for all the whiny parts, anytime she had any significant exposition she gave out. Can she not speak at warp 10 during this exposition? I mean, it really just clips right out there and you barely miss it. She mentions she's a courier. That's weird because she looks just like a dilithium trader. Why does she need combat training all the time? Is this just something, fistfights are something that people in the 31st century do? And if so, why? Again, this is one of those things that kind of craps on Roddenberry's grave. Have to talk about the burn. The burn. It has been long established that the Borg use transwarp conduits. There have also been quantum slipstream drives used successfully hundreds of years before. Both would have been viable replacements for warp drive by the year 3000. But for warp drive development to have completely stalled is ridiculous, because that's what seems to have happened. In any case, while the Discovery's spore drive was classified, no technology really remains classified forever. It gets rediscovered. For example, both the United States and Germany were working on the atomic bomb, but the U.S. happened to get there first. They would have figured it out eventually. Given 850 years, even if they classified the Discovery and its spore drive, somebody out there is going to reduplicate that work eventually. That is how science works. You eventually get the stuff, rediscovered or duplicated. By the year 3000, someone really should have rediscovered the spore drive. For that kind of innovation to have not occurred by the year 3000 is pretty ridiculous. It's also been established since Star Trek the original series that when your dilithium doesn't work, the engines stop working. They don't explode. The ships wouldn't have exploded. They just have been stuck in impulse power Their dilithium might have gone off for some reason, but the warp cores don't go. That's not how it works. It just, Also, Berman said that any ship with a warp core exploded, yet the Earth officer bought the story that the Discovery didn't explode because it wasn't at warp. I thought you said anything with a warp core exploded, not just you had to be at warp drive. It's also been established that warp cores keep running even if the warp drive isn't running. This was a plot point all the way back in the original series, in fact. If dilithium is known to be able to fail and cause massive explosions that can devastate a galaxy, why would anyone ever touch the stuff after that? They don't know what caused it to explode or go inert. Did a lot of it go inert in all the mines and every place that was being used throughout the Federation? Dilithium was also long established to have be integral to planetary energy generation. Wouldn't damn near every planet in the known galaxy have experienced catastrophic failure and massive environmental damage when their stuff blew up? Oh. Drop 2 says, I want to see Giorgio go and kill everyone. I like kick-ass Asian babe films, and Michelle Yeoh used to be great at them. Yeah, she did. It's just this character. She's such a liability. Drop her off on a planet, put her permanently in a very secure brig, or kill her. Really, in this case, I've really got no objections. Their supply of dilithium drying up throughout the Federation didn't make a hell of a lot of sense. It's long been established ever since the original series that dilithium is a naturally occurring mineral that can be found on many, many planets. It's a little rare, but it's not like you'd go... the Federation should have grown enough so that there really shouldn't be a problem. Multiple original series episodes hinge on this whole thing. And it was established by the time of the Next Generation that the Federation had mapped about 13% of the galaxy and had explored only 11%. That's up from damn near anything in Star Trek Enterprise. It's a huge amount up. And so the Federation must have grown exponentially by the year 3000 for there to be no dilithium anywhere in the Federation territory. Just mind-bogglingly stupid. Did all scientific advancements, except what we see here in this thing, just stop? This is a civilization that had advanced time travel only 100 years before this burn. Did they just absolutely stop doing any other scientific research? Why does the Discovery need robots to handle dilithium? It's been long established that dilithium crystals are safe to handle with bare hands and in fact have been used as jewelry. Dilithium has long been established as a semi-transparent white mineral. It is not red. And they did callbacks. They always do callbacks. For the benefit of those of us who've been around since 1967, they say, oh, okay, here's how we keep those viewers. We want to attract the woke, but we also want to get these guys back. So let's do callbacks. Something that works, at least they didn't use, like I say, I always try to find things that work first. At least they didn't use cookie cutter starships in the explosion shot the way they did with Star Trek Picard. Apparently someone told them that Starfleet has multiple types of starships. At least the Andorians still look pretty much like Andorians. They didn't get to turn into Kling orcs like the Klingons did. However, their makeup did take a massive step backwards from what was in Star Trek Enterprise. I did like the makeup there. It wasn't like it was in Star Trek the original series, but I didn't expect it to be. But the Andorians, they had just enough of a forehead appliance to be able to cover the circuitry and stuff that needed to make their antennae move. I thought that was great. I thought that was a great piece of makeup. And unfortunately, they've lost that now. Did like the fact that there was that guy of Morn's race from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Again, apparently they've watched a couple of episodes of Deep Space Nine, but that's about all. They kept his makeup intact. They didn't turn him into a Kling orc. I'm really rather amazed that anyone connected with the show actually watched an episode of Deep Space Nine. They haven't obviously watched episodes of any other series. What doesn't work? Well, everything else. Pretty much I've already talked about what didn't work. It was a hell of a lot of it. Did unrefined dilithium also explode? Yeah, exactly. Did it explode in the mines? Did it explode in rock strata throughout lots of different planets? what happened exactly, and why did it all blow at once? They'll come up with a reason for that. But dilithium is a ore that you mine from planets that have it. Did it explode on the planets that had it? Where are they getting it from now, by the way? How many planets and billions of people did that kill? These writers are juvenile. Yeah, it's been long established they use dilithium in all kinds of places and in planets where it occurs naturally. They clearly haven't watched much Star Trek ever. So at the end of a review, which I finally reached after damn near an hour, we have to rate this as, is it any good? Well, again, all that I said there, rating it on a 3 out of 5, with the scale being 1 as existentially threateningly bad, and 5 is passable. So 3 out of 5 isn't saying much. It is mostly boring, interspersed with bits of action that ultimately make very little damn sense. Not good. I keep watching this show because I can't look away from the train wreck. It's been more than 50 years I've been watching this show, 1967 to today. I guess it's coming up on, long time. I can't look away from the train wreck anymore. But I don't know. Maybe I need to make these into standalone reviews or something, because I keep fearing that I'm going to miss. My political viewers are going to walk away after something like that. But it was not good. All right. There's something else that's going on politically, because I broke it up with the bad review of Star Trek Discovery. Transparency.tube. Transparency Tube is attempting to do the same thing with YouTubers, although to their credit, they do point out both left and right-leaning, apparently, channels. Transparency Tube is a website that goes through channels on YouTube and rates them as to whether they're right-leaning, left-leaning, woke, anti-woke, etc. For example, Mecha-Random42, who is a YouTuber that I follow. She makes way more videos than I can follow, but she has talked about being stuck on this stupid list and wanting to get off of it. But you can see here, they've rated her as right-wing. Okay, guys, I hate to tell you this, but she's bisexual. And I'm just saying, it's not like right-wing people dislike homosexual or bisexual, but she isn't really. She just kind of like me, does not have Trump derangement syndrome. She can look at, and she doesn't even like politics. It's like me, I like doing science fiction, obviously. I spend an hour at it, more than I really do politics. It's just that I think I have things to say about politics that not many people are saying. And she doesn't like politics. I know, I've talked to her offline. She doesn't like politics. She doesn't want, I asked her to try to kind of push one of my shows once. She said, I don't really want to get into politics. But like me, she has no choice. There is no escaping the woke. I get some views out of that because I ever follow her on Twitter, and occasionally she'll put out something about how she really hates having to deal with this crap. And, she doesn't know what is going on, and I'll put out my video, there's no escaping the woke, and I'll ultimately get some views out of it because of that. Supercruise63 says, well, on the bright side, Mandalorian starts tomorrow night. Yeah, I am looking forward to that. Absolutely. Mandalorian's a good show. Dropper2 says, dilithium created by Gene Roddenberry in the 60s. The world runs on lithium batteries today. Yeah, but, dilithium is supposed to scientifically operate very differently. It's not really a battery. It is a focusing material for a matter-antimatter reaction. That's what it's always been. Although I don't think the writers know that. I don't think they know it. Anyway, you can see here that she has been classified not by someone reporting her, but rather by a algorithm that went out there from Transparency.tube and decided what she was. She had to say anti-woke is considered right in our classification process, which would mean damn near anybody's right. I haven't looked at the site horrifyingly closely. I did search from my own channel, and I follow this people who run this on Twitter. I've asked them to put me on it. because I can use the exposure. It's not like her where she goes, I'm totally unclassified wrong. If you want to take me and classify me as right, go ahead. I need the exposure. I don't care what you classify me as. Just put me on the list. Put me on the list. I need the exposure. Anything is good. But for most people like Mecha Random 42, this is similar to what's going on with that that Donald Trump .watch site. It's somebody outside saying, okay, all right, we're going to judge you as being this way. We're going to put you in the group of right-wing people that she doesn't consider herself particularly right-wing. And she thinks it's a poor classification. She thinks it's hurting her channel, and it may be. It can drive away viewers. For me, I have so few subscriptions that if you put me on there, it would help me because it would be some level of exposure. But for her, it's probably a bad thing. She's done her own videos on it. I suspect it may be hurting her, and that's intentional. That is the point of this site. The point of the site is to classify people as right or left wing, good to watch or bad to watch. The people who watch Star Trek under Kurtzman, the woke, will love this site. It will tell them, don't watch these guys. They have ideas that you might not like. Or, Mecha Random 42, don't watch her. She sometimes says things that, are a little right-wing. She says that Trump isn't the, epitome of evil. Oh, no. She said outright, I don't like talking about politics. But you can't avoid it. My video, There's No Escaping the Woke, is an absolutely true video. You can't escape them anymore. You cannot just sit down like she does and do genre work and videos all day long because they interfere. You can't get away from them. You can't argue with them. You can't get away from them. They're just always ever present, and everything has to be political. Even when you're talking about superheroes, it has to be political. Of course, it's not like the people who make comics and movies have done us any favors because they've done stuff like making Captain Marvel played by an utterly unlikable actress, and going to put her in front and center, not having earned it. She's just female, so that's why. Let's see. Super Cruise 63 says, yes, and the new Batwoman is black. I don't care. Just making a statement. The woke has struck again. It's just not canon. I'm not worried about the maintaining canon with the comics. On that one, my main thing is like, wait a second. Okay, all of the storylines in progress for that show involved Kate and her family. Now, if they just done like, a Darren in Bewitched, in which they just cast another actor as Darren, if they cast another similar actor, maybe somebody who could actually act, as Kate Kane, that would have made sense because you could continue those storylines and just say, well, it's a new actor. And people would probably accept it. But now they're in the middle of all these storylines. How are you going to insert this totally new character into those storylines? I mean, the whole thing with Kate and the relationship with Alice just falls to pieces. There's nothing left there. We're just going to have them leave and start new. I mean, that's my. I mean, if I was writers for that, if I was producing that show after she quit, I would have said, okay, let's just get her back for 1 2-hour series finale and quit. That's what I would have done because it just puts them in a huge position writing-wise that I don't know how they get out of. Marketing coordinator. Nice to see you here again, like I say. I think he's been smoking too many dilithium crystals. Yeah. Troop Drop says, you and I okay, Bill? Weren't far too small. I only have 2 videos on geometry and mathematics. Super Cruise 63, Batwoman, at least the new Batwoman, like a real woman, not a 90-pound talking stick. That was one of Ruby Rose's problems, is that she's anorexic. She really is. If you see a picture of her on the red carpet, she looks skinny as a rail, which means in real life, if I could shake the hand of an actress who looked okay on film and she felt like skin and bones, what must Ruby Rose be like? Because you can see the tendons in her neck. You can see bones everywhere. She must be just horrifically skinny. So she was consistently fighting stuntmen triple her size. And it's like, no, one good smack to the face and you're on the ground, Let's see. Marxist Jews who wrote the show do know what they're doing. It's called cultural Marxism. I don't know. I would refrain from. I don't know anything about their religious backgrounds. What I know is the showrunners are main showrunner, producer is herself gay, which I think is why there was such a heavy emphasis on homosexuality in it. And she's woke, so they're aiming at that market. I don't know that it necessarily has anything to do with religion. Batwoman could only be more insulting to black people if she had a 70s afro. Well, she almost does now. If you've seen the newest pictures, she's got a big red fright wig that looks like a freaking clown wig. Guys, just get rid of the wig. It looked like a $15 wig out of a Halloween store, for God's sake, in the first place. Just get rid of it. Put the cowl on. The woman's got breasts. And who cares if Batman's female or male anyway? I mean, in fact, it throws people off if they think that it's a male and it's actually a woman. You don't need a big freaking red wig that's going to constantly get in your way. Like I said, the new one, it's like a crimped hair, and it really looks like a clown wig. Let's see. Mark Inquirer, scientific believability. That person we shouldn't talk about could do better than come on. Man, I'm not sure what the scientific believability. I'm not quite sure what you're saying there. Anyway, back to a little bit more of the topic here. As I said, this website really is intended to give leftists an idea of who they should try to cancel culture. That's really all this site is. Transparency.tube is just cancel culture. That simple. It's just cancel culture. For me, guys, put me on it. For God's sake, put me on it. I need the exposure at this point. But it is really intended just to make it so that leftists have a list of channels that they shouldn't subscribe to, whether or not the content is any good or not. And in Mega Random 42's case, the content is... She tries not to do this politics stuff all the time. She really hates it. She does. I know. I've talked to her offline. She does not like doing politics. She would not push anything that I was doing because it was political. She just, no, I don't want to do that. Because we have some similar interests and stuff, but I talked to her offline. She doesn't like doing it. And she says so in the videos, I don't like doing this. And so I keep pointing her back to mine. You're doing this because there's no way out. You're doing this because the woke are making it impossible to comment about anything at all without, it getting political, without getting stupid really soon. And that's why we're all having to deal with this. Drop Truth says Batwoman Season 2, Jackie Brown versus Alice in Blunderland. Well, like I say, I don't know where they're going to go, but the storylines on that. But like I say, what this site really is just there to help leftists find people that need to be canceled. And apparently she needs to be canceled because she hasn't gone ape crap insane about Trump. Media propaganda complex aside, for me, the main difference between Trump and the other 9 presidents of my lifetime is that he's the 10th. That's really it. I don't, as a libertarian, I don't have a stake in either of this stupid left-right game. I just look at it and go, damn, we're obviously getting close to a civil war. When you have this website up, and you have one like Transparent.tube that's up there solely so that people can see, oh, look, it's somebody who is red. I shouldn't do that. I should tell people how terrible they are and not talk to them and not subscribe to them, blah, blah, blah. It's stupid. There's nothing that you can do anymore that doesn't turn into something that is going to be political. And Mecha Random 42, nice person, and near as I can tell, and does good videos, caught right in the center. And me, I've always been caught in the center, but I chose to place myself there. I chose to put myself there. But that is her. And that site, again, is really there just for purposes of trying to cancel people. The right cannot be tolerated under any circumstances, and anybody that leans even remotely toward that is going to have to be canceled. And that's why that site exists. There's no other reason for it. We're getting into a place, again, can't hit it hard enough. getting into a place where you better be keeping your ammo dry, because somebody might come drive-bying you. Keep your ammo dry. This is all going to come to a head next week, and that's if Trump wins. I think we can look at this site coming back online, sites like transparency.tube becoming more relevant, and if they can find people, cancel them or kill them. And I think we're looking at something of a actual shooting war, which I don't want. See my videos. I do not want it. I think it's a bad idea for everyone. It's not going to turn out the way anyone wants, even if the right wins like they think they will. The consequences are not going to turn out like they want. People in government don't want to be overthrown. When they see that it's possible to have a battle like this and possibly be overthrown, guarantee you that both the Democrats and the Republicans will agree the Second Amendment has to be shut down. They will be both in favor of gun confiscation, because they'll be frightened if there's an actual civil war. No matter who wins, that is going to be an outcome. There's going to be unintended consequences, and it's not going to turn out the way that either side thinks. And we could have a lot of death and destruction that we don't need. For God's sake, don't do it. I know it's going to happen anyway. Drop 2 says, I enjoyed Lovecraft Country. Sure, it was a little woke. Had identity politics, but it was well written, good acting, great dialogue. It was fun. I haven't seen that one. Haven't seen that at all. Not much of a Lovecraftian myself, although I do have a couple of memes. Got one that's stylized Cthulhu that says Cthulhu for President 2020. No lives matter. That one, and another one that says why choose the lesser of two evils? Which, is libertarians would generally go. Although I should say for people, newer viewers, I'm a libertarian, but I am voting for Trump this time around because as scrolls past, I'm in lower third, and lately in every episode, the left's policies would kill by starvation at least 15% of the world's population. It would cripple U.S. agricultural output, and because we feed over 1 billion people in the world, it would starve those out as well as a bunch of Americans, tens of millions of Americans. So those people are enemies of civilization. The left has become an enemy of civilization itself. It cannot be allowed to come to power because it would kill 1 billion or more people. 15% of the world's population, almost certainly. Drop 2 says, will there be martial law? Bill, remember the Doctor Who episode, Zygon inversion piece. Shooting starts, no matter how right you feel, no one knows whose children are going to die. I don't know about martial law. I don't know. I think Marshall Presnell and I had a discussion about this a while back. I don't think the right knows what's happening. I don't think they understand what's happening. I think they completely misread the situation. I think they actually think that if Trump wins, all that we're going to see is a lot more whining. Well, we're not. We're going to have sites like this, hit list sites. I don't think they're paying adequate attention to current events. They aren't doing like I do, and it scrolls past my lower third. It's in my description box. Don't pay attention to the press. Pay attention to first responder frequencies. Pay attention to citizen journalism on the ground. Don't pay attention to the press because they're lying all the time. They have become propagandists that Joseph Goebbels would applaud. He's doing a big thumbs up from the grave. I'm certain of it. You can't listen to those guys. You got to listen to other things. And if you listen to other things, what you discover is particularly a few days ago, I don't know if it hit the news much, but a few days ago in Philadelphia, it blew up. And it blew up because there was a guy who was killed. I think it was a black guy, killed by officers while he was brandishing a knife. Okay. Note to anyone of any race, color, creed, sexuality, etc. When you're confronted by police, drop the knife. Don't just, maybe if you keep brandishing the knife, you deserve to be shot. But it blew up in Philadelphia for a day or so. Got violent. In fact, there were two competing. I think Antifa and BLM were actually fighting each other. It's crazy, and those guys really hate the right together. I don't know what's going to happen in terms of martial law. I think the right has just totally misread the situation. I think it's not as bad as it actually is. People on the right that I've talked to about civil war, there's a bunch of them go, well, okay, if they want it, we'll give it to them. We'll win because, we have guns and they don't. I'm like, you are not paying attention to current events. They're entrenched, they're widespread, and they have guns. Did you miss in Portland where they murdered a guy because they thought he was a Trump supporter? Have you missed that part of it? No, they have guns. So that's... make sure I get back to another card here. Excuse me. Drop Truth says Germany and France are going into a lockdown. I expect will be like Melbourne, Victoria, or more harsh. The northern hemisphere is ending flu season. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I would say we've seen an uptick in Lincoln, but again, you have to remember that's still a tiny fraction of our population. It really isn't a problem. For new viewers, I'll just go through it again. It really comes down to what are called infection vectors. I was in IT and in IT security for a long time, so the vectors are how could the virus get in, right? If you had, say, a perimeter, which you don't really, but if you had a perimeter, what are the ways it could get through the perimeter? Well, you get someplace like New York City, a jillion different vectors. They have multiple international airports in the immediate area, lots of tourism, tons and tons of international trade, both in air and by sea, and none of it's checked for anything. Huge vectors, and the largest population density, I think, in the United States. Well, come out to Lincoln, Nebraska. Well, our cities grow outwards because they're unlimited space. We're not bumping up against the seaboard or a Great Lake like Chicago. Unlimited space, so we grow outwards. We don't have the kind of population density. We don't have any tourism. Nobody comes to Nebraska except on their way somewhere, usually like, Yellowstone. Nobody's going to stop here because there's nothing to see. It's all just flat grassland. Aside from the 2 or 3 population centers we've got, it's just all flat grassland. Ain't nothing to see out there. So they're on their way somewhere. They're not stopping. We don't have any international airports. We are landlocked, have no international trade. We just don't have the infection vectors. And so we don't see the number of infections. We don't see the types of infections. We never will. We never will. It comes down to infection vectors. Marketing coordinator says, people are committing suicide as we chat. My friend's sister is there. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Man, I hope that that calms down. All of Europe has infection vectors that are pretty bad. All of them do. Many of them, are seaports. Even the inland ones, Europe itself would fit in the United States. Most Europeans, this is what they don't get about the U.S., right? We have this 200,000 some people that have died from this. Well, yeah, but, you can't look at that just compared to a single country. Take the entirety of Europe, and compare it against that. That's what it needs to be compared against, not an individual country, because of the land area and the varied types of, economic activity that goes on in different states. It's not a one-to-one comparison. Supercruise 63 says some people just look for a reason to riot and loot. Yeah, look at Los Angeles. They win the NBA championship, rioting and looting. Dodgers win the pennant, more rioting and looting. I used to pay attention because my kids were growing up in the Chicagoland area. It's just a given. In Chicagoland, in the city of Chicago actually has a riot frequency. A toll frequency devoted just to riots. And yeah, whenever somebody wins something, they have, big riots. But I think when you get into things like Antifa, Black Lives Matter, you're talking about rioting, looting, arson, robbery, armed robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, and the murder of innocents. It is different. I've never heard... I listened to a lot of the ones in Chicago, and I never heard one in Chicago where you might get some injuries, but it's not like anybody went out and said, "Oh, look, there's somebody who was for, I don't know, the Boston Red Sox." Blam! That didn't happen. I could certainly say, having listened to Chicago long enough, that there is a field commander out there, female field commander. Oh God, if anything goes wrong, she's the one you want in charge. She is the one you want in charge. It was amazing to listen to her. I mean, just an excellent leader, excellent commander. She would be out in the field. She was their field commander, and she'd be, giving very calm, straightforward, But at the same time, this is my order. And she'd be saying, do this, do that on the radio, simultaneously being like, by the way, you need to go over and do this, do that right now off the radio while she's talking. And go over here. Yes, you need to go here. You need to go there. Totally calm. Just straightforward leader. Totally calm. And when she was on there, you knew nothing was going to happen. You knew that the officers under her were not going to make any mistakes because she was perfectly calm and rational the whole time. She never, despite how horrible it might be, she never, ever let it show in how she commanded. Other field commanders that I listened to, oh man, they were nervous, they were scared, they were worried about the situation, and let it show, and you could hear it in their officers. But when that woman was in there, I don't know who she is, but if there was ever going to be a riot and I'm going to be near it in Chicago, I sure hope that she's the one running the cops, because she was great. She's great. Going back a little bit. Drop 2 says, like to see the statistics of suicide in Australia during this lockdown. Yeah, it could be bad. I don't know. Look at George Soros. I never know how to evaluate any claims about George Soros. You hear his name so frequently that it starts to become to me unlikely that he's involved in everything. I mean, anytime anything happens, the first go-to is George Soros. And I'm like, okay, is this guy like Hydra? You cut off one head to take its place. I mean, for him to have his fingers into so many things, to me, becomes less likely. Could he have his fingers in some stuff, some major stuff? Yeah, absolutely. But everything? I just don't know how to evaluate that. I mean, show me actual documentation. I'm a scientist by trade. Show me the actual documentation that we can absolutely, for certain, always trace to him or some entity that he controls. Show me the actual documentation. Don't show me YouTube videos where they talk about it. Don't show me web pages where they talk about it. Show me documents. Show me financial statements. Show me things where we can actually say for absolutely certain that he's behind something. I just don't know how to otherwise evaluate it. BLM equals because looting matters. Yeah. Bolshevik lies matters. Yeah, they're certainly, they're Marxists more than anything else, but yeah. You read Saul Alinsky and Karl Marx too, marketing coordinator. It's all rather obvious. Well, I think what's happened over time, particularly, let's see, is it 9? Okay. What really happened in the last couple of generations, and by the way, you see that in their attitude towards Star Trek. I've said it a million times on my show, but benefit of new viewers, education is a big deal with me, really big deal. My family was in and around education for generations. My grandmother at various times taught. My great aunt of mine taught in a one-room schoolhouse. My mother taught grade school for several years. I taught at the college level for 3 years. I've been in and around education. I've not been directly involved in it, aside from being around it and seeing how it worked. But we've had a long-term problem with education just dropping off to nothing. I always like it. I'll put a link to it when I'm done here. There's a great article by Robert Heinlein, a nonfiction piece that he wrote in 1980 called "The Happy Days Ahead." And in it, he talks about what the real problem is. And it is a long-term problem. 100 years ago, a teacher in a one-room schoolhouse, because of the fact that generally she was teaching many different students of many different subjects, many different levels. She had to have a very high educational level. The next generation came around and they said, there's some stuff in here that just doesn't make sense. Let's start taking out advanced mathematics, certain languages. So the next generation was only this well educated. And they took things out of the curriculum. So the next generation was only this well educated. And the next was only this, and the next. And so finally we're down here, where we honestly, from what I can see from having taught college level, we're now graduating total illiterates. People who literally cannot read, write, nor perform the most basic math. I saw that. Try teaching somebody who binary math and logic who can't do any mathematics on their fingers. And that's what I was seeing. I was seeing people who could not read. That's what we're graduating now, because our education level is down, down, down. What they have replaced it with is communist and socialist indoctrination. Just that simple. They've replaced it completely with that. So for 12 years, if you got your kid in the public school, for 12 solid years, they are going to be indoctrinated that communism and socialism are good. They're not going to be taught any level of history, which would teach them that the 20th century is an entire textbook of how communism and socialism always fail, killing millions in the process. And you can go farther back in history than that. But they don't learn any history about anything. Every Bill of Rights Day, I would hand out a copy of the 10th Amendment. I was in IT, so I didn't sit there and lecture people about politics. But I thought it was important that they understood the 10th Amendment, so I would hand out the 10th Amendment. They didn't know it. They'd never seen it. I remember one guy specifically, we got to talking about it in the lab one time. He said, "What is this?" I said, "Well, this is the 10th Amendment of the Constitution. It basically says, Constitution says we only have a few limited things that federal government to do, and then this amendment says everything else is the states for the people." And he's like, "It actually says that?" Yeah, it actually says that. They've been taught nothing. Absolutely nothing. If you succeed in today's educational system, you have done it two reasons, either because you're incredibly bright or because you're doing it in spite of the system, not because of it. Sorry to any teachers who might be watching me. I'd happy to have you call in and talk to me about it, but I'm telling you, you ain't teaching your students crap. It's an absolute abomination. I have several videos. I have an entire series on this. If you go to my channel, it's one of the ones that I had there a little bit down the page. America's Broken Schools. We need to completely eliminate current K through 12, and for that matter, everything up to the PhD level at colleges and universities. They are nothing but communist and socialist indoctrination centers. And we should replace it with something else. And I've got a video about what I think we could replace it with. Now, there's lots of other things I think you could replace it with. One of the nice things about having 50 different states and many, many different school systems is that you can have many different ideas. And maybe you'll find one that works better than others. And maybe that one will be adopted by other people. But we can't have what we have now. What we have now is horrifying. Your children are being indoctrinated that communism and socialism are good, which is why they're out there now rioting and looting and committing arson, robbery, armed robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, and the murder of innocents. Because they believe that they need to do this to bring about a socialist nation. They haven't been taught a thing other than indoctrination for 12 years. For about 2 whole generations, maybe even 3. I would certainly start to include my generation. My generation had it starting. My generation learned certainly way less than my parents did. And they learned less than my grandparents, who were, and both my parents and grandparents, my grandparents spent their entire education in a one-room schoolhouse and then high school. My father spent part of his in a one-room schoolhouse and then larger schools. But they learned way more than me. My parents were required to know Latin. My parents were required to have higher level mathematics. For me, Latin wasn't even an elective, and higher level math was an elective, which I did take. But I have to tell you, that was because of my mother. What happened was I was going to a private school for about 3 years. I think it was 3 years, 4th, 5th, and 6th grades. I was going to a private school, a very exclusive private school in Omaha, Nebraska. It's what they would have called a prep school, really prepping you for, Harvard, Yale, stuff like that. And I went there for a while. And so because of that, in I think 5th grade, I started learning French. I was pretty fluent in it. I stood. One of the things you learn if you're learning other languages is the fluency depends on your being able to think in it. I still think a little bit in French, and I can understand most of what I'm told in French still, even though it's been years since I've had to do it. I can speak some French still. I wouldn't call myself 100% fluent at this point, but I do sometimes watch French news channels on YouTube just to keep my hand in, But they were teaching us that in 5th grade. Our mathematics was so high that when I left that to go back to a public school in what was now called middle school, junior high at that point, when I went back there, my math was way up here. They weren't teaching what I had already learned. So my mother, who was certified to teach, tutored me in higher mathematics. So when I went to high school, well, I was ready to go all the way through advanced calculus when I was a junior. That's what they don't teach anymore. My parents learned far more than I did, and their grandparents learned far more than they did. We have had a long-term problem, down in terms of what our teachers know And so therefore they cannot teach anything to anyone, which is where we are now. Socialist indoctrination centers. And that's all. Back to lithium, yeah. Read it all. Soros' companies are buying the gun manufacturers. He's making his way to make gun control. Again, I want to see the actual documentation on that. Without firing one shot, we will subvert. There's going to be lots of shots fired starting next week, I think. Communism is a violent takeover as for China and Russia. Absolutely it is. And I think we're going to see that starting next week. Look at this website. It's not quite up right now, but it's ready to go up at a moment's notice. It was up until just a few days ago, and now it's down, I think, because the FBI got on them. But if Trump wins, expect it to go back up, and all it is a Trump donor hit list. If Trump wins, we're going to see widespread violence starting next week. Yeah, load up on guns. Bring your friends. It's time to lose to pretend. It's a music first, then TV, film, then MSM. Marketing coordinator says social cultural Marxism is subversion by changing one republic laws. We don't need to worry about it anymore. We have no constitutional republic and have it for my entire life. You don't have to be a good actor in Hollywood, just a good sodomite. I don't know if that's necessarily true. You're talking to a guy who really doesn't care. I don't care if you're gay. I don't care. Most of my generation doesn't care. What we tend to dislike is when it gets constantly shoved in our face. You know, it's not like my sexuality is something I go shoving into his face. It's not like I have parties where we celebrate the fact that I'm heterosexual. You know, if you want to be equal, fine. I don't even care. You just, treat it like I do. Okay. I might have a girlfriend. And, do I go around, hey, look, it's my female girlfriend. Or look how I dress. I dress like a man because I'm heterosexual. Who cares? It just doesn't matter. Go and do whatever you want, but it doesn't have to be put on display for everyone to see the way, because we don't either. It's just the way it is. Who cares? Needs a brain nowadays. You have your smartphone, it thinks for you. Yeah, I'm watching people asking questions of, digital assistants, and I'm like, God, no. I will never have one of those. We know for a certain fact now that the people who make them are, Google, YouTube, Apple, Amazon. Those devices are always on, and they are, in fact, feeding the data back to those companies. If you got one in the bedroom, well, it knows exactly what you're doing. It may know anyway because it can kick its own gain up to try to pick you up. Drop 2 says, Mark, good coordinator, good. Another Christian in this chat. I have no problem. I tell you outright, I'm an atheist. I have no problem saying that. But I am not an atheist with a chip on his shoulder. Let me get out of this card for a second here. You get somebody like, God, I don't even remember. I'm blanking on his name. Richard Dawkins. Okay, Richard, as always, if you happen to be watching, will you shut your damn trap? You're making the rest of us look bad. Rest of us don't care. My favorite story I was living in Iowa at a time near Des Moines when there was a small town that came under attack by a bunch of people outside the state who got their nose bent out of shape because they were putting Christmas stuff in the town square of this small town in Iowa. And they had these morons on a local talk radio thing. And I knew from experience that they would let me on any damn time that they could, because it was a small enough market that they weren't like Rush Limbaugh where they just constantly backed up. So they would let me on. And I just got on and I said, what are you guys doing? Who cares? How is this hurting you? And they said, well, somebody might be, atheists might be offended by it. No, I'm an atheist. I'm not offended by it. I mean, I may think that these are a couple of, sticks tied together, but, it means something to people of faith. Let them do what they want. If it helps them get through the day, fine. Put up some Christmas stuff in the town square. What is the problem with that? Well, somebody might be offended. I'm like, I don't know any atheist except you morons who are offended. By the way, you're outside of our state. What business is of yours anyway? And that's my general approach to it. I'm an atheist, but I'm not one with a chip on my shoulder. It's as long as you don't hurt anybody in terms of your own religious faith, I don't care. Half a second, I need to get something. Pardon me, for some reason, I tend to get sinus infections. I think I've got one coming on. But I'm an atheist. I have lots of family that aren't, and they tell me, they'll say things like, we're worried about you spiritually. We love you and we want you to go to heaven. I'm like, okay, I appreciate that. I get it. They're saying to me, we would like you to be there with us. We want you to have a good afterlife. And I'm like, well, I don't believe that it's going to happen, but I appreciate the sentiment. I appreciate that you feel highly enough of me that you would want to do that. Oh, let me see here. Sorry. Cultural Marxism is not a religion, but a satanic twist from the Talmud. I don't know enough about Jewish religion to be able to tell you what is or isn't in the Talmud. I generally would say I don't. I know there's a certain section of people that want to blame Jews for everything that I do. Again, you show me the documentation. If they're behind something, if Jewish people, and I tend to treat everyone as an individual. That's how libertarians are wired. We don't group people together. At least we try not to. And so if you're going to say Jewish people of some kind are bad, I want to see the proof. I've been a scientist by trade. It's what I do. Give me the proof. Show me that this religion has specifically told these people who are involved in this bad thing to do something. And I think that becomes very difficult to do. You can't just say Jews are behind this or Jews behind that. I won't go off on you and talk about, anti-Semitism or anything like that, because I think it's not conducive to having a conversation. But by the same token, I got to see the documents. Not just, point me to somewhere in the Talmud where it says this or that, because I know. I used to go to Mass with my ex-wife every day for 13 years. I know that damn near everybody sitting there in Mass was violating some commandment, and the one about not committing adultery was right at the top of the list. So you can't tell me that there are all of these Christians who will always definitely follow every single one of the precepts. I know that's not true. And I really actually learned a lot. I learned a lot about Christianity by going to Mass for 13 years. I didn't believe it, but I learned a lot. I say to atheists, if you want to be informed, not with a chip on your shoulder, but be informed, go to Mass. Go to something religious for a while. You don't have to believe it, but listen. Listen to what's being taught. And then I listened, I understood, and I go, I know he's sleeping with her. I know he's sleeping with her. I know she's sleeping with him. I know he's sleeping with him. I know she's sleeping with her. And they're all married to somebody else. So you can't tell me that the same thing doesn't happen with Jews. I don't think you can look at the Talmud and say, there is this one thing it says in the Talmud, and then, oh, well, it must all Jews are doing this. No, because not all Christians follow the faith. I can tell you, they say they do, they pray, but it doesn't stop them from screwing somebody else. Drop a 2 says, marketing coordinator, join me on Twitter. Yeah, absolutely. Good guy to have on Twitter. Same name. I let rip there. Yeah. Get banned, then get reinstated, then I get banned. It's the way of the world. If you get banned on or put into timeout on YouTube or Twitter, Facebook, I actually have a thing that I give out to people. I've been in Facebook jail kind of metal, and depending on how many times you've been put into timeout, you can have different clusters on it. I should do the same thing with Twitter and hand it out to people that I know that have been banned off of there for a while. I was banned. I had to start a new account because of it. Non-political town hall meetings is the key to discuss Declaration of Independence, Bill of Rights, and of course the Constitution. No one, regardless of their religious faith nor their political affiliation in government, wants to talk about those things. because they are, and this is not an overstatement, it is a statement of fact, those in the federal government, whether they be congressmen, senators, presidents, or their staffs, their lackeys, their hangers-on, they are all, by the textbook sense of the word, power-mad, sociopathic narcissists. To reinstitute or to have a constitutional republic of the kind that is specified in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights would completely erode all of their power. They would have virtually nothing left. They will never let that happen. Ever. They will never let it happen. The only three ways in human history, and I invite you to prove me wrong, there are three ways the government changes in human history. 1, you have a revolt. 2, you collapse from the inside. Or 3, you are conquered by another nation. No one in human history has ever voted themselves more power. And so now we have a totally uneducated populace who has never been shown the Bill of Rights or the Constitution, and power-mad sociopathic narcissists who don't want them to get the picture about it. Oh, they make noises about the Constitution when it's useful for them, but do any of them actually follow it? No. 99.9999999999999999999% of what they do in government is totally unconstitutional by any sane reading of the document. It doesn't matter who it is, they will never discuss it. Never. Ain't gonna do it. Won't be happening. Your election is a sham, a New World Order distraction for vaxes and chips. Okay. I am against certain vaccinations on a scientific basis. Anytime, if they're going to get a vaccination for COVID anytime soon, I would be very leery of taking it because it is too soon. You have to have gone through a lot of different scientific things, including lengthy clinical trials. And that's where you give people, some people the drug, some people you don't. You give them something that's called a placebo. It looks like the drug, but it's not. And neither the scientists nor the people in the study know which has which. It's all hidden until it's all over. And you have to look and see what the actual efficacy is. How many people actually had a good thing happen to them as a result of taking this drug? You have to look and see what are the side effects. How many people had side effects who took this drug? You have to do this over and over and over and over again. It takes years to do it properly. Anything they can come up with right now, they're not going to know the efficacy. They're not going to know the side effects. No way am I going to take that until such time as I can see what the efficacy is. We give it out to 150 million Americans, and then we see what happens to them. We let some other poor schmuck be the guinea pig, and let me find out what the actual efficacy is. What are the actual side effects in a large population? When you get to a lot of other vaccinations, however, the fact is, and you cannot deny it, that vaccinations have made all kinds of different viruses and afflictions that the human species had up until the beginning of the 20th century and through it completely disappear. When was the last time you saw somebody with polio? That used to be damn near normal. All kinds of things that we just don't see now because of vaccinations, because we've been using them for generations. We know what the efficacy is. We know what the side effects are. And we know that they're good things. That's different from this virus that we're talking about now that I shouldn't talk about because I get my channel blown. But that is a totally different thing because you're going too fast. You don't know what the efficacy and the side effects may be when you go fast. So the rest of it been going on my entire life. I had chickenpox when I was a kid. Wish I'd had a chickenpox vaccine. Yeah, I know you can still get it. There's some percentage of the population that does. God, I would have avoided that week if I could have. And my kids never had to deal with chickenpox. All kinds of stuff has been eliminated with vaccines. Marketing Coordinator says both parties working together. Yes, exactly. It is scripted like a bad soap opera. I don't think anybody's scripting anything. No, nothing like that is happening. It's not scripting. You have to remember, each single individual in government, whether it's a congressman, senator, or president, has inside them a little emperor of the galaxy screaming, "Unlimited power!" constantly. They each want to be dictator of the world. They do not, for the most part, really get along together or scheme together, because that means they have to share their power somehow. So they're not looking to script anything or get together. They can't. They're idiots. They're just trying to constantly get power. So that's really not happening. You have to remember they're power mad sociopathic narcissists. It's all about me, 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 me. Everything would be great if only I were in charge of everything. That's what they want, unlimited power. So they don't share, they don't script. You may see them sometimes get together on something, but only when it happens to be in their immediate short-term interest. It isn't something where they're going to say, okay, I'm going to put this aside and not be the dictator of the world. No, they all want to be individually the dictator of the world. They don't sit down and script things together. Marketing Word says you will win. Where was the silent majority in all these cities? I'm not sure what you're talking about there. Drop 2 says voting should be as mandatory as it is in Australia. How can you take... well, I don't think voting should be mandatory. I think you should have a test. If you can't name all the candidates on a ballot, if you can't name whatever initiatives are on the ballot, don't vote. I'd say that just to anybody. If you can't do those things, for God's sake, don't vote. You are not informed enough to vote. Don't vote if you don't know those things. Walking into the place, if you don't know every candidate for every office and everything that's on the ballot in terms of a ballot issue, if you don't know what they are, don't vote. You are not informed enough to vote. Drop Truth says Catholics aren't true Christians. Well, they'd sort of disagree with you on that one. True Christians can't be forgiven by men, and don't pray to idols, and don't rewrite the Ten Commandments to suit their theology. I haven't done a comparison study of various sects of Christianity. All I can tell you is what I learned by virtue of sitting in a pew for 13 years. They consider themselves Christians. I know that there's competing sects that call each other non-Christians. As an atheist, I go, well, they all seem to have a couple of things in common. Christ being the Savior, died for our sins. We're forgiven under certain circumstances. The circumstances may vary. It's God that can forgive you. In Catholicism, it's God acting through the Pope and therefore down the chain. In other religions, I couldn't say for sure, but they're all competing from my perspective. It's not a question of who's right. I can't, I couldn't point to one and say, you're not a Christian, you are, you aren't, you are, you aren't. As somebody from the outside, let's go, well, they're all kind of competing. They all have a few things in common. Some other things differ in terms of dogma, in terms of belief, but ultimately, at the end of the day, they all consider themselves Christians. Who am I to say that they're not? Let's see. Drop 2 says, let's see. Drop 2 says, let me be specific. I'm against the Roman Catholic Church, not the average Catholic. Remember, I lived in South America, and my late wife and her family are Catholic. That was tiring. Well, I tell you, it may be a little bit on the heretical side. But if you've ever seen the movie Dogma, my main issue with Catholicism in general, they express this in the movie Dogma. Catholics don't celebrate their faith; they mourn it. Here you have this great thing given to you by God, right? He has died for your sins. You get to go to heaven, and instead of getting up and really being up about it, there's a compare that to like some Southern Baptist church where it's yeah, go on, we love this stuff, and it's just it's rote. That's my main thing, is that it's not in this day and age something that lifts you up. It's something that's just and nobody's very enthused. And to me, it seems to me that if I actually believe that stuff, I ought to be pretty damn enthused about it. Let's see. Marketing coordinators is another one. Same. Okay. Gosh, I actually caught up. Awesome. Let's see. It's been 2.5-ish hours. I'm sorry. Excuse me. As I say, I'm susceptible to chronic sinus infections. I can tell I've got one coming on. If I was smart, I'd go see my doctor like tomorrow. Usually if I get, of course, you'd probably give me a test for that virus I can't talk about. But I can feel, it's just so common, I can feel it coming on. I need antibiotics right the hell away. Otherwise, it'll become impacted and just unpleasant as all hell. So, This is Dogma is one of my sister's favorite films. Loathed Matt Damon's and Ben Affleck, but appreciated the humor. Yeah, I got a kick out of it because I think that Kevin Smith was raised as a Catholic, if I understand correctly, and so he was saying, okay, well, what if, we had these two fallen angels, and what if they were going to take advantage of this thing in Catholic dogma, and what if, okay. It said that whatever you say is law on earth, I will obey in heaven. So if they go through this arch of plenary indulgence, then they will be forgiven. And what is the impact on that and all of reality? And I thought that was kind of a cool thing. I can't tell you for sure how Catholics feel about it, but as somebody kind of looking from the outside who'd been in Mass for a long time, I was like, yeah, that's kind of a fun idea, and the humor behind it is very good, like you say. I'm not a huge fan of Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, but I kind of like them in Kevin Smith's View Askew Universe films. I think they're pretty good in those. Marketing Quarters is too late on education. The masses was sleeping and too busy with consumption and forgot about God. I certainly think that that's true. I look back because I have, immediate ancestors. My grandparents were cattle ranchers. My father, worked on that ranch until he went to college. And went off there. I was there in summers growing up. So I have some, attachment to that. It's kind of in my blood. And as a result of my grandmother and spending time with her out there, I got to read a lot about what had kind of been normal behavior in at least rural America. And, they would spend all day Sunday. You'd go to church, and then you would spend the entire rest of the day working on your Bible studies. Children would spend the entire rest of the day silent, working on their Bible studies. So I think that's certainly true, in terms of having altered pretty radically. I don't know if that's on balance, despite the fact that I'm an atheist. On balance, I would have to say that getting away from Christianity to the degree that we have has ultimately been a bad thing. I look at Christianity, and I think that there's a lot of different beliefs that, as an atheist, I look at it from the outside and I look at, knowing what I know about some other religious faiths, it seems to me that they have bled into Christianity and, picked up over the centuries. But the one thing that, as somebody who, I particularly studied like the Greek and Roman pantheon, it looks to me like the main thing that Christianity brought to the table was simple thing: love thy neighbor as thyself. And that one thing, I think, is probably responsible for more of the civilizing of human beings than anything that came before it. There may have been other religions that had it, but it was certainly popularized by Christianity. And by getting away from that, love thy neighbor as thyself, I think it has an uncivilizing effect. So, despite the fact that I'm an atheist, I'm capable of looking historically at what has happened, and I think to some extent you're right about that. But yeah, so so you're talking to an atheist who doesn't have a chip on his shoulder. I'm not Richard Dawkins. I'm not going to go off and say, well, if God's spoken to you, you're hallucinating. I'm not an a-hole like he is. Doesn't mean I believe it, but it does mean that I can say, okay, well, if it helps you get through the day, if you're not hurting anybody, more power to you, man. More power to you. I don't care. As long as you're not hurting anybody in the process of practicing your faith. If you're going to start going out and doing human sacrifices, that's where I draw a line. If you're going out and holding a gun to my head and saying, nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition, you have to believe or we're going to kill you, then I have a problem. But as long as you're just doing your thing, and you occasionally say to me, hey, we'd like you to have the same. And I would go, well, like I do with my relatives. I appreciate that. Thank you. I don't think it's anything I'm interested in, but I appreciate that you feel that way about me. You know, as long as you're doing that, hey, fine with me, man. Fine with me. I have no problem. Whatever helps you get through the day, as long as you're not hurting anybody. Drop Truth says Protestant Christians built the democratic world and the industrial world. I think there's probably some to that. I have to go. Well, see you later, Drop Truth. A company has arrived. Thank you very much for the kind words about the show. Oh, I'll tell you what, it's about 11:30, and looks like I've got about 7-ish viewers-ish, or maybe none. I'm not sure at the moment. I have a control panel for YouTube that lies to me all the time, so I'm never quite sure whom I have on. But in any case, it's been about an hour and a half, and I can feel my back is starting to hurt, and my maxillary sinuses are predictably starting to get problematic. So I think I'm going to go ahead and drop off. I would mention, oh God, I have decided that on Tuesday, November 3rd, please join me for a very special episode of Tales from SYL Ranch. I will be holding an exclusive live coverage of the U.S. general election, much as the idea generally disgusts me, or as I like to call it, the war for the White House. Oh, I didn't get that sucker behind me. I don't think it's a war. I just like satirizing how all the news agencies always talk about it that way. I have a link in my description box for that live stream. You can find it somewhere in my channel as well. I've scheduled it on November 3rd at 7 p.m. Eastern Time in North America, which would make it 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Mountain, and 4 p.m. Pacific. And I'm going to go as long as necessary, no matter how hard it hurts my back. I could conceivably be on for 6 hours or more. Could last all frickin' night. You'll see a lot of my emergency trailer if that happens. It really depends on whether one of the candidates has such a resounding victory that they cannot be challenged, that it cannot be contested. If that happens, hey, good, I'll probably have it short. But if not, could be the outbreak of shooting Civil War II if Trump wins. So that live stream again will be November 3rd at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Mountain, and 4 p.m. Pacific in North America. And you can find a link to that in my description box. So be there and be square and make sure that you have your ammo dry. You're probably going to need it. So that is all the time that we have for that. I'd love to keep the conversation going. So please leave your comments, questions, and nasty remarks. I'll do my best to respond to you. So thanks for watching. That's all the time that we have today for Tales from SYL Ranch, where everyone is entitled to my opinion. And I'm Bill Stone.
Ultimate power in this world has always been one simple thing: the control and manipulation of minds.